Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 5th, 2022 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are meeting tonight to start our meetings with department heads to go over the fiscal year 23 budget and to prepare for that. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight, so we're going to jump right into it. Although we do have for a Zoom meeting, the new protocol is to take a roll call. So for the Finance Committee, we have myself, Matt Sala. We have, I'll just go in the order that I can see in the boxes on my screen. We have Christopher Murphy. We have our newest member, Daniel Eddy. Welcome, Daniel. We have Andrew Leveralt. We have Paul Haggerty. We have Joe Rojas, Russ Fuller, and Barbara Ray. And at this point, I will turn things over to Barbara. I am fighting COVID right now myself, so my strength is not super great. Barbara's going to kind of run the meeting for tonight, as she has kindly offered to take the reins.
Thanks, Matt. Hope you're feeling better too.
Thank
and
you.
If at any point you need to leave the meeting, feel free to.
And sorry, just a quick note. If Abington Cam could allow me to share screen, that would be great. I can put documents that we need up. While
you're waiting for that, I'll just say we have several guests tonight. We have the town manager, Scott Lambiese, the treasurer collector, Sonia Hodge, Wayne Norling, the IT director, Adam Gunn, the veterans agent, Deb Grimmett, the library director, Henry DiCarlo, the library board of from the library board of trustees, and John Nuttall, our fire chief. I think we're going to be starting with Wayne Norling, the IT director. Wayne, whenever you are ready. Matt's just got this screen sharing capabilities up, so whenever you're ready, Wayne.
If I can just interrupt for 1 second, Barbara. I also made you a co-host too, so that if there are any graphics and Matt needs to leave, you can put them up too.
Well, you better hope that that doesn't happen, because I'm not extremely techy. I could probably take some lessons from Wayne, but let's hope that Scott might have those.
I can also share if need be too.
Oh, okay, Russ, perfect.
Russ, okay, I have to add.
Okay.
I appreciate that, folks, and hopefully I'll be able to stay on the whole time and do the sharing. I have the agenda up shared right now. So,
okay.
And I'll ask Wayne, are there any documents that you would like me to share to start?
No.
Okay.
My budget's pretty much the same usually every year. It goes up a little bit because of the vendors, increasing costs. If you look at my the salary budget's pretty much the same. I did get a 2% pay raise from the union. The next one is data processing, which is all the internet connections. That's pretty much static. That went down a little bit last year, but it's starting to go back up again because Verizon's raising their rates again. Telephone budgets pretty much the same, there's not a whole lot different there. Licenses and support. We do have the e-permitting cost in this year, which is the $35,000 for being able to fill out permits online. We just went live with that last week with the electrical permit, I think. We're getting ready to put the building permit up there. We're going to be slowly incrementing each department for all their permits, so the citizens can just fill out permits online, pay for them online, and not even have to come into town hall. Let's see. I don't. Okay, one thing that's different this year is my Sophos antivirus. It's a 3-year license, so it's up for renewal coming up this year. So that's an extra $3,000 in my budget. And I had to take over the Team Viewer, which is our remote software, so people can remote in to do work from home. I'm gonna have to take over that cost too, because the state was paying it for the COVID. Everything else is pretty much static from last year, for the last 3 years.
Matt, I'm sorry, Wayne, are you able to share Wayne's portion of the budget to screen share it?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to the right document on that
Sorry.
one. Sorry, Scott and Sonia, which,
Matt, I could share it right now. I got it up if.
okay, that would be,
So I
Page
would need
12, I think.
We would
Sorry.
need Abington Cam. Abington Cam, if you could allow Daniel Eddy to screen share so we can pull up that.
He has got screen share capability.
Thank you.
excellent. Daniel, thank you so much, and
Sure.
welcome, your first official words on the committee.
Russell
Or
and
to
Scott are
jump
also
in
co-hosts as
and
well.
save that.
Got a lot of windows. Oh, here we go.
Thank you.
Everybody
Sorry,
see
Wayne, I-
IT?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Wayne. I just wanted to make sure that everyone could see exactly what you were talking about for the numbers.
Yeah, so the Sophos, the 3-year renewal, that's coming up. That I haven't had to put that in my budget in the last 3 years, so that's our antivirus. And the $35,000 for e-permitting, that's becoming our responsibility. The COVID paid for the first year of it. So we're starting to go live with that soon.
But it was in your budget last year, but
Yes,
yes, okay.
yeah, well, yeah, because I had to pay for it before, you know, the
Right,
end of
yeah,
the
you
year.
didn't know that was gonna happen.
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
yeah.
Wayne, could I ask actually about the e-permitting? Since
Yep.
it's being set up, do we expect the cost to go down in later years after all the setup is done? Or is
No,
this,
that's the support cost. That's the
Is it?
setup cost, everything. Yeah, that's the yearly cost.
got it.
Wayne, is that being hosted?
Yes. Through a company called OpenGov.
And where is that? Where is it being hosted? Is it in the US?
Yes.
Do you
I'm
know,
not
what-
sure- I'm not sure exactly what state they're out of, but yeah.
do we have any requirement for any hosting services that they have to be maintained in the United States? Do we have any
Not-
policy, Scott?
Not that I'm aware of. The OpenGov was actually one of the ones that I can't, they've been bought recently by OpenGov. This is sort of the standard one that all the communities are using and that the state has been pushing us to use for permitting.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't have any policy that says anything, at least unless Wayne has something that I'm not aware of that says it has to be hosted in the United States.
No, not that I've seen.
Okay. And the antivirus, where do they, I mean, that's not a big name. It's like is that a cost consideration? Is it like, where do they rank? I know
Sophos?
Yeah,
No, Sophos is one of the bigger companies. They're very, very good compared to the others, Norton and Symantec and any of the other ones. They actually stop ransomware attacks. We actually had one that it stopped it immediately as soon as it came in. What it does
And
is it isolates your computer, so that way it shuts it down so it can't spread anywhere.
and do they have a regular patching schedule?
Yes, they patch all the time. They patch weekly at least.
Okay,
Yeah, they're a large enterprise.
Yeah,
pro-
Paul, we deal with, I work in the IT field and we deal with Sophos a lot for the
Yeah.
hospitals that we
I'm
work
extremely
with.
happy with Sophos compared to the other ones we've had in the past.
And Paul, OpenGov uses AWS, so Amazon Web Services.
all right.
Yep.
And just, if anybody's watching, this is just one piece of Wayne's budget. That we're just talking about the licensing section here.
Yes, I pay the licensing for most of the town departments. That's my
Okay.
largest part of my budget, so,
Right.
yeah. And then I mean, like a computer maintenance budget, I have $20,000 there. That's for server upgrades, desktop upgrades, switches. We had with the last power outage, we had a switch blow up for our Wi-Fi in the town hall. I just purchased a new server. Our servers were replaced when I came on board, and they're server 2012. I'm getting ready. I just bought a new server. I'm going to be replacing that with 2019. And then I plan on buying another one next year. So all of our servers will be up to date with server 2019. And then I got to start purchasing new desktops. During COVID, I upgraded all the computers in town with more memory and upgraded them all to Windows 10. But now all of a sudden Windows 11 is coming out, which a lot of our desktops are at the low end as far as processing power. So I'm going to need to start buying some new computers for around town. So
Wayne, is this $20,000 going to be enough? For
I
what
make
you're
it-
talking about?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
The server costs about $5,000. With this, I'm going to have to spend about $3,500 on buying client access licenses for server 2019. And then desktops, yeah, I can make this work, no problem.
Okay.
Looking at the last 4 years, it looked like you've been right on budget.
Oh,
every year.
yeah, I live and die by my budget. I don't go over.
But is it
Right.
enough? But is the budget enough? I mean, I
Yeah.
know you, but because one of the things that I've noticed is like, we haven't done any had an outside firm come in and evaluate the town from from the IT's perspective. And I don't know how this finance, my first time going through this, but it's like, to me, I'd recommend the finance committee, it's we consider putting money into the budget to do evaluation of IT, not a criticism of Wayne at all, but just a reflection of the world that we live in now.
We
That
wouldn't.
everything's so,
I'm sorry, Paul, we wouldn't put that into his budget. We would do that. We could certainly do an article for that. Or, come up with finding that money, but it's not something you would do every year, is it?
yeah, you really should be doing it.
Or so like an annual audit of everything? All right.
Sometimes, I mean, it's best practice is to evaluate I mean, because, I know when you do internal,
Yeah.
I don't know if you do vulnerability scans in pen testing, but it's like at a minimum, doing a pen test and a vulnerability pen testing annually, vulnerability scans, it could be quarterly or biannually. But like, those are things that should be built into Wayne's budget, especially where it's external, so you get an independent view of it. And
Well,
again, it's not a reflection on Wayne, and he's not doing anything. It's just the world that we live in. It's moving so fast, and things are changing, and the vulnerabilities are expanding, daily.
Paul, would you know what something like that would cost annually? If it were something that were done annually, do we know, do we have a ballpark idea of what kind of money we're talking about for?
Yeah, I mean, you can spend $20,000 to $75,000 on it. I mean, the vulnerability scan and pen test, to get an assessment, it depends on, the scope of the work. I mean, the pen test and vulnerability scan, I mean, you could probably get by with like 15 grand for that. And you'll be
99% of our network is not internet facing. So basically it's our firewalls that are facing the internet. They've been upgraded to the latest, greatest version. They're constantly patched. The biggest vulnerability in town is the town employee. And that's just a training issue with them as far as what they should be going to. The antivirus is a huge part of that. As long as the antivirus is up to date on everybody's computer, they're pretty safe. But like anything else, there's a new vulnerability out every day.
Yeah, and like you said, Wayne, the users are by far the biggest vulnerability of any organization. So
Yeah.
right, but we don't have anything built in our budget for training and education for security awareness. And I don't know if would fall into Wayne's or somebody else's or the town manager's budget, but we haven't factored anything into that. And he's absolutely right. Wayne's absolutely right on that. Biggest
I would be
vulnerability is the employee.
I would be interested to see what other towns are doing for both of those, for the education and for the pen testing or whatever, just to get a gauge of if we should be budgeting for
Some
something in
towns-
some budget.
Some
we know.
towns hire firms where they come in and they send in fake emails to see if what employees actually click on things that they shouldn't be. And some do monthly 5-minute training thing online.
My company does both of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, is that something that you could look into and get back to us with some information on?
Yep, absolutely. I'll tell you, the last, 2 towns that I've dealt with, it's been minor training, but mostly email reminders and, constant reminders from IT on things to be aware of, the most current phishing scams or the biggest problems. But I absolutely think it's a great idea. So
Definitely something to have on our radar.
Yeah, I agree.
Wayne, did you want to continue with,
Well, that's basically about
That's
it
pretty
with my
much-
budget. I mean, everything else is all the same for the last probably 4 or 5 years. I have training, I have $4,000 in my budget for training, $750 for travel. Just a little office, my office budget, it's like $400. It's not, everything's all the same.
all right, well, and we ask everyone this, do you have any warrant articles, Wayne?
No.
Okay, and does anyone else have any questions?
Well, I just I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but it's like, Wayne's a one-man band, and that poses risks to the town. And how are we managing that risk if Wayne wasn't available? Because we don't have a backup.
Scott, do you want to?
Yeah, no, and I think Wayne did submit, and I did send it out to you, a staffing plan, and it is a consideration. It would be nice to have, an assistant for Wayne. In a perfect world, he'd have an assistant IT person who could help him with these things and with the trainings, and obviously it would work in towards a succession plan.
Yep.
But again, that's kind of, it would be something that we'd be looking at in the FY24 budget. And again, it's what we can afford. I think if something happened tomorrow, we would end up, bringing in, and God forbid anything happens to you, Wayne.
Yeah.
But we would be sort of in an awkward position. We'd probably end up bringing in consultants until we could right the ship and figure it out. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, that's kind of one of the big things that we've looked at all around here is, what do we do? Are we working to have, people ready to move into leadership positions?
And Wayne, on that end and just in general, how much do you work with the school department's IT?
Very little.
Okay.
I work with them once in a while when there's issues and stuff, but yeah.
And
Is
Wayne,
there-
just for the general public, your department consists of?
Me, as far as what?
Right.
As far as staffing,
Just me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do the fire, the police, the highway department, library, senior center, sewer department, town hall.
And he's also our facilities manager for several buildings.
Yeah.
And so as far as like an administrative assistant, Wayne, those duties you handle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there, I assume you've got documentation for all the servers and all that stuff. All that is.
Yep. Oh,
up
yeah.
to speed. Yeah, I would.
I keep everything
and
all-
somebody knows where all that stuff is.
Yeah, it's on my computer. They can get it anytime they want.
but that didn't answer the question. Somebody else knows where it is, though.
Whoever wants to know, I can give it to them. Yeah.
Well, that might be something we might
I've
want to put
never
on
been-
place.
Yeah, I've never been asked about, so.
There should be instructions on how to access that.
Yeah.
Even if it's someone who doesn't know what to do with it, so that they can hand it to whoever we have to bring in.
Yep.
Are there any outside services that could provide that, like a vendor? I'm thinking like after hours, like an on-call or something like that, but could do that in an IT capacity that you're aware of, or?
There's lots of them out there, but I don't usually use any of the outside vendors. Very rarely do I use them. Yeah.
Okay.
You
No.
just don't want to just have any vendor out there knowing your whole environment either, because that's a security risk. So.
Now, Wayne, on the license and support line item, you've got different, is there anything built in there for you for, like, you've got network support for $3,500?
Yep. Yeah, that's when something happens that I can't figure out, and I have to. So a couple of years ago, but about a year and a half ago, we had something go on, and all of a sudden it took out half our stuff, and we couldn't figure out what it was. Well, somebody at one of the other departments decided to try to help out, and accidentally unplugged a cable, which was a critical cable, and it just took out part of the network.
Okay.
So
you do have some sort of, like, on that line item there, you do have some outside resources you could tap into if you needed somebody.
yes, yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
But they don't normally have access to our network.
Right.
I'll set them up with a temporary account. When they leave, I disable it. So.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Wayne?
Not a question, but because Wayne is our first department this year, I just want to point out to him that every year, every single department that he works with comes in and sings his praises. So we haven't gotten those yet this year, but I am guessing that this year shall be no different. But we hear praise for Wayne from every department he works with. So I want to make sure you know
Absolutely.
that.
Wayne, you truly are a huge asset to the town, and literally keep things running on a daily basis. And we appreciate all your hard work.
No problem.
Thank you very much for your time tonight, Wayne.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne.
Wayne.
All right, so in the interest of time, moving right along, we're going to move on to the Veterans Agent, Adam Gunn.
That's on for the document that we're on, Daniel, that's on page 67.
Can I just ask a question? On the spreadsheet, the care of veterans lots and Memorial Veterans Days, does that fall under veterans? Is that a separate? Who's responsible for that?
That's a separate line of accounting. What do you mean?
I'm asking Sonia or Scott. So you care of veterans lots and Memorial Veterans Day. Is that in Adam's budget? Or
Yeah, well, that's something that Adam deals with. Is it
but is it in his budget?
Well, he's in charge of that budget. It may not be in this specific department budget, but he does oversee those items.
$600.
Why don't we, Adam, why don't we let you start, and then we can ask some questions if you want us to wait or ask questions as you go along, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Sounds great. My budget is pretty straightforward, minus the part-time assistant. I think I increased the postage $25 due to the increase in postage. Besides that, my budget is the same. Before I go on to the assistant, are there any questions on any of the line items?
Yeah, the last amount, down, if you go a little further down, the next page, please. That one's up.
So
Oh, it's the
that,
same this year. It was up last year. Okay, never mind. I was reading it wrong. All right, good. It was 198 last year. It's 198 this year. I'm reading that correctly.
Anyone else have any questions to this point?
What makes up that 198?
so that veteran aid budget is for chapter 115 benefits for low income veterans. That is anyone who falls under the federal poverty level. We provide monthly assistance, financial assistance covering medical costs for low income veterans and widows. So that can change significantly from year to year.
And Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is something that is reimbursed at, I believe, 75% from the
Thank
state.
you, Matt. That's a great point. Yeah, 75% of that budget is reimbursed by the state.
And
Adam,
the
you've not had any issues with that 75% being less than 75% at any point?
It was prior to my arrival. If we don't get the approval from the state because it was paid incorrectly, or somebody was paid for a benefit that they weren't entitled to, the town can lose out on that money. And that's where Lori Berry was given a weekly stipend to help go back through that previous years, which she's still doing, to work with me to try to get that money back.
Excellent. Yeah, because that is definitely something you want to have plenty of oversight on. Thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
And what's the reasons for the fluctuations?
So it can depend on how many clients we have, whether it's, I think we had 20 coming in when I started on October. Right now, those numbers have dropped because some of those clients turned out they did not qualify. Sometimes the veteran deceases, and because the widow's Social Security amount increases, they no longer qualify for the program. There's a lot of factors that can go into that, but it's mainly financial. I have to get all of their financial documents and bank statements, and for some of them, it has to be looked at on a monthly basis.
Okay, all right.
It
Thank
does
you.
seem like this year so far in 2022, almost halfway through the year, we're not on pace for the 198, and we didn't hit that in 2021 either.
That's correct. We will be well below that number this year. As I am a one-man show as well. Coming into this position as a full-time veterans agent, the word spread quickly and VA claims started pouring in. So I do not have the time to advertise like I'd like to, having senior hours at the senior center, where I have an hour per month going over there during events, going to the American Legion and promoting the services that I offer.
I think too, Adam, important to point out that we previously were in years past had been sharing a veterans agent. And so that does drive the numbers down a bit because you don't have somebody full time. And
no, they were higher before and now they're lower since we've gone full time. That's what I find interesting.
I've been spending more time doing VA claims and less time advertising after 115 benefits. I know there are a lot of other veterans in Abington out there that could be or that are in need of using these benefits, but I just don't have the time to provide outreach.
Okay. But next year, we expect to do that.
I'll get into that portion of my budget when we're ready. Absolutely.
One other quick question, Adam. What do you think, what effect do you think that the pandemic has had on any of that? If any?
It's affected it quite a bit. I spent a lot more time going into the homes of a lot of the veterans. So it's time out of the office, traveling to their homes. A lot of them are scared to leave. For me I have to go into their home. Sometimes I'm going through their filing cabinet and finding the paperwork, spending hours creating Social Security accounts online for them so I can get the documentation that I need to provide them financial support.
Thank you. Anybody else? You want to continue, Adam?
I'd love to. If I could have a 5-minute spiel to read my spiel on the assistant in order to kind of justify why I could use an assistant. I kind of want to break down my job so everyone has an understanding of what I do. So bear with me here for a few minutes, please. Approximately 30% of what I do now is veteran assistance VA claims. In FY21, the VA paid out $412,828.13 into the pockets of Abington residents. Out of that, VA claims about 91% of that into Abington. And I will get into that a little more later. On average, I'm seeing 1 to 2 new clients a week for new claims. But right now I'm scheduling almost a month out. I just had somebody call a couple hours ago and I scheduled them for February. Most that call want to be seen as soon as possible. So I am having, when I can, I have them come in and they file a letter of intent or intent to file, excuse me, which allows them a year to file the VA claim. But understandably, a lot of people who are calling want to have help now. So I am turning some people away to go to other organizations that will help them with claims. I have to go through hundreds of pages of documentation. I have to scan and digitize them according to the disability or military incident. I have to research medical problems, connections. I have to speak to family members, acquire statements, do home visits, request medical, military, and civilian records, and I have to submit the actual claim. I upload the claim into a VA database and then send everything off to a national service officer who submits it directly to the VA. I then work with them with the client to ensure the VA has what they need before moving on to the next one. I frequently do these at veterans' homes because the medical problems and ease for the veteran or the widow to have the right paperwork and complete the claim. Obviously, this results in more time and oftentimes more than one trip to their home. I spend approximately 20% on Chapter 115. We have between 19 and 21. It's flexed since I've been here. Low-income veterans and widows that receive financial assistance. As I stated earlier, 75% is reimbursed from the Department of Veteran Services. Each new client must be thoroughly investigated to ensure integrity, or the state won't reimburse the town back. In addition, I do 2 annual recertifications that must be done in July and December, where I recertify all their bank statements, lease, mortgage, medical insurance claims, premium changes, mortgages, paperwork. It's a very in-depth process with a lot of paperwork. I would like to have more clients if I were able to spend more time on outreach. There definitely is a need out there. They aren't getting the assistance that they should be due to my time constraints. Follow-ups are lagging, home visits are being squeezed in when I can, and certain problems are not getting done quickly as they should be, which makes me circle back and clean them up at a later date and time. I spent a lot of time justifying and proving my data to the authorizers who work for the Department of Veteran Services. If they see a suspicious charge on a bank statement, change in policy cost or an expired lease, questionable reimbursement, I have to get the paperwork from the client before DVS, Department of Veteran Services, will authorize that payment. Even today, I'm going back to October of 2020, trying to find what a $1,500 charge was, so that they can decide whether that that veteran was authorized that amount. Approximately 20% in phone calls, 20% approximately I'm trying to do public relations and meetings and miscellaneous, having monthly vet lunches and breakfasts at the senior center, the Colony Health and Rehabilitation. Right now, I've paused that for December and January, just because I don't have the time due to the recertification of Chapter 115. I'm also involved in the Veteran Community Organization involvement, the American Legion, the VFW, Knights of Columbus. I get a lot of advertisement through my services and support from them. 10% probably in training and Zoom meetings. A couple. We have a Veteran Service Officer Association. We have a weekly Department of Veteran Services. Also the Plymouth County Outreach Hub meetings. So that's kind of a rundown of what I do. The assistant, the primary job would be to live, breathe, and own all the Chapter 115s. As I said before, there is a lot of room for growth, especially compared to other towns. 75% are senior and elderly who do not use computers or technology at all. They often have unorganized bills, medical paperwork, social security, bank statements, prescriptions, apartment leases, insurance documents. I'm going over tomorrow to somebody's home to help dig through their filing cabinet so we can get, an 89-year-old widow her benefit this month. I've thought about getting a volunteer, as there are programs out there, but one of the reasons I can't have a volunteer is I have access to everything in their life. They sign a release of information, so I have access to request any of their bank information, social security statements, retirement savings, pensions, criminal history, credit card use directly without authorization from them. So I'm not able to get an assistant, or excuse me, a volunteer to come and help me out with that. They would also assist with voicemails, phone calls, emails, follow-up, promote assistance offered by my office to the senior center. That would increase the Chapter 115 clients like we should be. And also following up with VA claims months after to get updates and see if the client wants to come in and try to increase their percentage that the VA offer them. But I'm not able to do any of those right now. Any questions so far?
I do. Actually, Matt, you can probably, I might be dating myself a little. Do you recall having a veterans agent assistant back in previous years when we
I know when
Joe Colantonio
I think that might be before me. I know that when we had combined with Whitman, we had an agent and an assistant for the two towns, but I don't remember having an agent and an assistant just for Abington. But I do recall that when I first got on this committee 9 or so years ago, the Veterans Department was a bit of a mess. So
it's changed significantly over the last 10 years or so, and flopped through veterans agents and tried part-time. My first few months here were a lot of angry phone calls from people who thought they submitted their VA claims to the veterans agent, and it wasn't. The part-time veterans agent was certainly not working out for the town. I think the main way the town would benefit the most is for me to be able to do more VA claims. VA claims have brought in $379,227.74 in FY21. That's for 246 veterans. Again, outreach. I could be going over to the American Legion on a monthly basis and getting the word out that way for VA claims. I don't know if other departments that can justify an assistant will bring in more income to the town, significant amount. If I was granted a assistant, the VA claim numbers and the money that comes into Abington just significantly increase.
How many clients do you have and how many clients could you have? Approximately. I know that the second one is particularly difficult, but
as far as
just
low income, chapter 115.
right, yeah, or just you know, I don't know if we even know how many veterans there are in total, and then guess at how many.
Right now, according to the census, there's a little over 900.
Okay.
And that's obviously who put that down on, you know, their voting information. I think there's a lot more than that. The number of claims, I mean, if somebody's rated at 80% and they're having issues from their back that has gotten worse, they can come see me. I can gather that medical documentation, bring that to the VA to try to get them from an 80 to 100. As far as projection, I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, it just depends on how much time and outreach I can do. So it's really hard to kind of project where those numbers could be, but they could be a lot higher than they are now if I had a lot more time to focus on VA claims.
How many, but how many people are you serving now?
The number fluctuates, but approximately 1 to 2 a week. I'm trying to juggle that call. Right now I'm pushing out to February. So sometimes they like that, and sometimes they don't.
We don't know how many are actually making claims.
I'm doing them on a weekly basis, but no, I mean, that
No,
number
okay.
constantly
All right.
changes. It's hard to give anything solid on that.
So we
Hey,
don't know
Adam-
what the slack is.
Adam, I have a question for you. I don't know if I heard you correctly or not, but the VA claims of disability, did you say that that brings in revenue to the town?
So let's see. Yes. In FY21, the VA paid out $412,828 into Abington residents for just VA claims. Oh, excuse me. That's how much the VA paid. Out of that, 91% of that, let's see, $379,227 was for VA claims.
That's not to the town, that's to the residents of
The residents in Abington, yes.
Got it. Okay.
So not revenue generating, but
Right.
reimbursing and what's paid out.
Money that's hopefully being spent in the town, yes.
Right. I got you. Thank you.
Welcome.
One question for Sonia. The 19.5 hours in fiscal year 23, what's the magic number for pension and health benefits?
20.
It's 20.
Okay, good.
Sorry, I was laughing at the cat next to Sonia. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. She likes to join in.
That's why it's at 19.5 hours.
Yes.
If I was granted an assistant, in 2 years, I'm going to be coming back and showing you numbers of where the VA claims have obviously significantly increased, as well as Chapter 115 would significantly increase. And I projected, I think it was FY25, I'd probably be coming back and asking for a full-time assistant. According to, let's see, let me find the. In 2011, the state's recommendation for, and this is 2011, the state's recommendation for VSOs with a town of 15,000 residents was a staff of 1.5, VSO included, and that was 10 years ago. This program has changed drastically since then, which requires much more electronic paperwork, monitoring, and the practices and workloads have increased. VSOs, but 2011 was the last time the state published recommendation for VSO numbers to do the pushback from the towns, but they are working on putting out more guidance again. But that was in 2011. And I think we are just over 15,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Any other questions?
I do have another question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Daniel, to jump in. I was fighting with
sorry.
the mute button. Adam, what was that recommendation again?
1.5 for
Yep.
15,000 or more residents.
Okay.
In 2011.
Thank you. Daniel, go ahead.
For the assistant BSO, I imagine that you'd look for another retired veteran, right?
Either a retired veteran, I mean, ideally that would be great, yes, because it's 19 and a half hours. We need to find somebody willing to work without benefits.
Right.
They need to be.
Yeah, so
familiar.
that's kind of where I was going with that is, is there somebody who has the veteran experience, whether it's, 20 years or not, and then would be interested in a part-time, gig like this? So.
Either that or somebody who's partially retired who can work through Excel and all the wonderful databases we get to use online. I think that needs to be the biggest thing.
Right.
It doesn't really have to be retired, but they should be a veteran or at least have compassion, if not, because their whole job would be to take care of their main job would be to take care of the Chapter 115 low-income veterans.
Right.
So Adam, when you're doing that out at a client's at home, are you doing that online or is it still paper brace and then you take it back to the office? How does that work?
Most of the time, Wayne gave me a tablet. It's a little more finicky than I'd like. So sometimes I do end up making trips back and forth, trying to basically print out the paperwork and the forms, have them fill it out. I'll come back to my office, type everything up, see if there's anything I'm missing, and then go back to the client's house and have them fill out the paperwork. The biggest challenge is when the recertification happens twice a year. And they need to get their bank statements. I mean, a lot of these low-income veterans or widows do not leave their home at all. They don't drive. They're stuck in their home. So I have to go to their house to get the forms and paperwork where they can mail things in, but it's a lot easier to just go to their homes and take care of it.
But is that something that you need to, improve on as far as the equipment that you are working with? I mean, improve the efficiencies of being out there, are there, because you spend so much time with these people, but it's like, if it's a manual process, is there equipment or other means that could be available to you?
The tablet works. It would be nice to have a larger computer. I mean, that's a possibility to save a little bit of time in the future. Absolutely.
Okay.
Great point, Paul.
Would a small, I mean, that's it's a great idea, Paul. Would a small portable printer help save, back and forth trips?
Possibly. Absolutely.
Okay.
Or even just a scanner.
Yeah, a scanner.
Yeah.
Well, your phone and scans.
It does, but I mean, we're talking about, 3 months worth of bank statements. If they have a mortgage, we need utility bills to show that they pay for fuel, Medicare D, B. There's hundreds of pages sometimes for
Probably more capacity probably than a portable printer could probably handle, but
Would it be possible to have temp help at town hall to be able to do this scanning and some of this paperwork stuff for you?
We don't have temp help at town hall.
We do not have temp help.
Well, I know, but I was hoping that what if we did though, I guess, is it something that we're not allowed to have or?
I mean, again, it just has to be somebody who we can trust. It's difficult
Understood.
because each file I need to name a certain name and form number and file it in multiple different places and email and scan. It's a possibility, but it would take a lot of oversight on my part.
I understand. No, I definitely understand that.
looking to save you some time, but it's not really, there really isn't
I
much way
need
to do that.
somebody who is 100% focused on
Right.
one job and to take that off my plate so I can just have oversight of the program.
And Adam, just real quick, just for the general public, what's the staffing in your office?
I'm it. You're looking at him.
Thank you.
All right, Barbara, could I actually ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
So the reimbursement from the Chapter 115, where does that, do we know where that goes each year when we get it? Does it go back into your budget?
It doesn't go back into my budget. I think, doesn't it go back to the general
I
fund,
believe that
Sonia, I
goes.
believe, the general fund?
Yeah.
I believe that's correct.
Yes, it would return to the general fund to help pay for offset, obviously, the expenses, but it's not directly recorded to his budget.
Thank you.
So it makes his budget look higher than it really is.
Right.
Yep.
That's the same thing with the, I don't know if we're getting into, same thing with flags. So the money that's spent on flags is also 75% reimbursed.
So to be clear, you know, a part-time position or that, you know, full-time position that you're looking for literally pays for itself.
Well, you know,
Yeah, more.
that doesn't get reimbursed, right?
No.
What he's saying is the Chapter 115 money reimbursement would theoretically pay for it.
Saying the
Well,
assistants-
no,
No, the 115 money is money that we've paid out, and then we only get 75% of it back.
The assistant would take care of the Chapter 115, which would allow me to do a lot more VA claims and
Right.
have more money come into the Abington residents.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would directly benefit the residents of the town.
right.
The people who need,
Okay.
veterans that need it the most would
Yeah.
very much
Benefit the
benefit
And
from it.
even 100% veteran, a single veteran, almost $3,200 a month. So it's a significant amount.
Any other questions?
Again, not a question, but I know that Adam has done a lot of work with the schools and local school age children and on projects that they've been doing a lot of work on. And it's been very impressive and very good to see the work you've been doing in the town, both obviously directly for the veterans, but also for the rest of the community. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you, man.
Yes, I'm happy to have a full-time veterans agent again in Abington for Abington's residents and veterans, and definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you,
Yes.
Barbara.
Anyone else? Anything for Adam? Adam, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
All right, so moving right along, we're gonna move to the library director, Deb Grimmett.
And library's budget literally is on the next page. So just
It's,
scroll down.
Henry DiCarlo is is representing the Library Board of Trustees. Sorry to keep you guys waiting.
Mhm.
No
Good to see you,
worries.
Henry and Deb.
So just for a quick introduction, if I could, the library trustees are a 9-member elected board, same size as your finance committee, but we're an elected board, the largest elected board in town. And you got, some of you have heard this speech so many times, you probably have it memorized, but, and we have, we oversee about 1% of the town's budget. And in cooperation with the town manager, we hire the director, meeting the state requirements, and we serve sort of as a board of directors for the library. We're responsible under state statute for all the property, all the services of the library, and we think that we do as much with that 1% as probably any other department in town does, as far as reaching out to everybody in town. And they use our services on a voluntary basis. You know, our police department may not always be voluntary, but when they come out and see you, but when they come to us. And so it's from infants all the way through the senior citizens that we deliver books to at their houses. And we also have been a leader as a function across the state, the 351 cities and towns, the 29 towns in the cities and towns in the network. We've been a leader in resource sharing, and we've been doing that for 40 years, really trying to share resources and make available to the people in Abington, the citizens and the part of the Abington community, all these resources across the state. So I won't spend too much more time here because I want Deb to go into the budget itself. But I will point out that, Deborah is, I don't know, should I say this out loud? Are you the senior department head now? As far as tenure goes, you may be. You're muted, Deb. She's.
I think Henry pointing out tenure-wise is a smart choice there.
Tenure-wise, yes. And we noted this year that Deborah's the parent of an Abington school teacher now. And I hate to say this, but I remember when we gave her maternity leave. So anyway, but I think the library is one of those services in town that everybody uses. We focus on the children, but we provide services to everybody in town. And you'll know that when you walk into our library and the children's room is right there on the right-hand side. There are other libraries in the neighborhood that you go in and have to wind your way downstairs to find the children's room. It's been a focus for us for at least 40 years, probably longer. So anyway, I will step back. I will not make this go too long and let Deb take over from there.
Thank you, Henry.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am delighted for those of you who were on this call last year. I'm delighted to not be in my home worrying about one of my dogs barking. I am happy to be in an open library, which has had children in it today, several children, in fact. So that is all good. Those are good things.
Wonderful to hear that, Deb.
I'm quite happy about that. So basically, to run quickly, why don't I deal with the state and the municipal appropriation requirement and the all of the requirements that libraries need to meet for minimum standards first? Basically, I'll go quickly because most of you have heard this speech before. The municipal appropriation requirement is set by the state, and it is the average of the prior 3 years budget times 2.5%. And the reason the state does that is so that the residents of Abington are not paying for library service for another town. It's to try to level the playing field and make sure that all communities contribute to their public libraries. State aid so to be certified for state aid, which means we get money this year, about $32,000 directly to the library for the library under the control of the trustees for expenditure. And also the most important aspect of state aid is reciprocal borrowing. If your library is not certified for state aid, then your library collection is the contents of your building. And that's it, and whatever digital resources your town may have. Libraries that are uncertified, residents of libraries that are uncertified cannot walk into the library in the next town and borrow a book. And again, the reason for that is to encourage every municipality to fund their library. So in addition to meeting the municipal appropriation requirement, the library needs to be open to all residents of the Commonwealth from communities that are certified. You need to make no charge for normal library services. For a town in our population group, which is 15,999 to 25,000, we need to be open a minimum of 50 hours per week. The library director must hold a master's degree in library and information science from an accredited library school, and also be certified by the state, by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. Expenditures on materials for direct patron use. So that means physical books, ebooks, databases, DVDs, not so much anymore. Any magazines, digital magazines, anything that patrons can use must equal 15% of the total municipal appropriation. We need to lend books and other materials to other libraries in the state. We need to complete our yearly state requirements, state aid application, and a statistical report. And we have to report non-resident borrowing because we get a tiny amount of our state aid comes from reimbursement for non-resident borrowing. So in a very quick nutshell, those are the minimum standards for library services. So in order for our library to be certified by the state, we have to meet all those requirements and we have to certify that we meet them every year. And are there questions on that piece of this before we hit the budget? Because that's kind of the background of where the budget comes from. No, awesome. Okay, so moving right along, the first section of the budget deals with salary. So that includes the entire library staff and also a requested 17.5-hour week children's teen librarian position. For the record, in the budget, as we have recently reduced it, that's one of the cuts that I made. I will also say for the record, and again, those of you who have been listening to this for some time, we have been requesting this position. I went and looked it up today since fiscal 2018. The purpose of this position is to be able to expand services to, particularly to the schools and other children's and teen programs. That's our primary focus in our mission statement, and our children's librarian and other staff are stretched to the limit. Right now, the children's librarian visits every kindergarten and pre-K class monthly, and classes in grades 1, 3, 5, and kindergarten come and visit us. That's a lot of school visits in addition to story hours, toddler times, and programming here in the building. We'd like to be able to offer services to other elementary grades and classes, and ideally expand the kindergarten and pre-K visits. Children in schools who see public librarians tend to agitate with their parents and come and visit the public library. The point of that is not to get people, so much to get people in the door as it is to get people in the door with a library card and to borrow books for their kids, increasing literacy. Children using the public library benefits everybody in the community by raising literacy standards. So basically, that's it. Question? Yep.
Yeah, I think we have a question. I think Paul has a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make that the requested position, that's still in your budget.
It's in this version of the budget. We were
Okay.
asked to we were asked to submit what we would reduce from the budget. And that is what I reduced. I reduced that and a corresponding amount out of the books and materials budget to keep that at 15%. I will also say that those reductions were made by me and they need to be approved by the Board of Library Trustees.
Okay, but what we're seeing tonight is the salaries with that position in there.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay,
that's what's
thank
there.
you.
You're welcome. We have a hybrid staff. We have 5 members of the union. So we have 3 full-time, 5? No, we have more than that. We have 3 full-time library assistant librarians. We have the children's librarian is in the union, and we have 3 part-time library assistants. So that's actually 7 people who work over 20 hours a week. And then we have library assistants who work less than 20 hours a week. So we have a partially unionized, partially non-unionized staff. And salaries are right there. If there are no more questions about salary, shall we roll forward? Sick leave incentive is in the library union contract. That $400 is what we've been budgeting for the last several years. It does not actually cover the amount of the sick leave incentive. It pretty much covers whatever the amount that's used yearly. And if we go over that, the library trustees will use state aid to make up the difference. So So that's what that is. Building repair, let's see, gas for heat is fairly obvious, that heats the building. Building repair and maintenance is to take care of the building. That includes things like fixing the roof when the roof has issues. It includes electrical problems. It includes problems with the HVAC, plumbing, and so on.
Can I just stop you here?
Sure.
Gas for heat, is the reason why that dropped so much in 21 and 22 is that you were forced to close so long?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And building repair has also, since 2020, has been significantly less than budget.
Same. I think, you know, in a public building, things like bathroom faucets and flushes have issues fairly frequently. When a building is used less, as we were, we closed in March of 2020, we reopened started curbside in May of 2020, reopened in July of 2020, went to curbside only in December of 2020 and reopened in March of 2021. When building is used less for that amount of time, there are simply fewer things that break. There are also interesting issues like discovering that when the things don't get flushed very often, sometimes you need to go in and flush once a week. For example, with an all-female staff, we realized that the men's room hadn't been flushed and it was a little unpleasant. So we went and we started, as part of our routine before we reopened, we were going in and flushing a couple of times a week just to keep everything moving in there. But yes, you know, that's it. I anticipate that this year we will be spending more on building repair and maintenance.
Even though.
Is there a plan? Like, you know what you're going to allocate it to?
Repair and maintenance is, some things are planned. We are looking at changing the water bubblers, which have now had signs in them that say not available for almost 2 years, to a water bottle filling stand, which would be infinitely healthier. Unfortunately, the parts to fit our particular plumbing system are back ordered and have been for almost a year. So that's something that's planned. When that becomes available, we'll make that repair. Other things are not planned. When we have a windstorm and we have water coming through the ceiling, that's not planned. I assume that we're going to spend portions of the budget every year on plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and the roof.
But it historically over the last couple of years, it hasn't been used. So like even for this year, you've still got $17,000. Is there a plan to use the $17,000 this year on top of the 23? So that's $40,000 in maintenance and repairs and maintenance. Is there a plan for that?
If I could, Deb, to point out to Paul and mention to Chris also, on the heating, we're open nights, weekends, Saturdays, weeknights, unlike any other building in town. So we have to take that into account. The trustees have, the first 10 years or so, spent almost nothing on repairs and maintenance. Very, very little, because we had a new building. The building is now, you ready? You're all sitting down, 25 years old. The new library is 25 years old. We haven't been open quite for 25 years yet, but the building is that old. So we've seen our repairs and maintenance go up every year up until this last glitch. And we've been actually trying to add a little bit to that budget each year to increase it, to make sure that we're there maintaining this building properly, because the town has invested so much money in it. We want to make sure that it's properly maintained and upkeep is done. And I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay. But did we just put a new roof on it last year?
No, we funded the survey, the engineering work.
Okay.
Yeah, and Chris, that was, sorry, Henry, I
roof.
can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
That was something that we had looked at as part of the warrant and the capital plan for last year, but got taken out with the budget crunch, and something that Scott has been working on, trying to determine a better and more accurate cost for it before we actually move forward with that.
The question isn't that I think you shouldn't have a budget. The question is, I hate to see you cut back on books and magazines to get down to your 5% less when the budget is showing maybe there's a little bit over budget here. But if you don't think it is, then, you know, it's your choice. It's not up to me.
One of the things that the trustees typically like to do is, if the book budget appears to be underfunded, at the end of the fiscal year, we will spend over in that line if there is money available someplace else. So that is certainly a possibility. Making sure that we have building repair and maintenance money for the things that may happen during the course of the year. I can't predict, you know, a few years ago, the hot water heater went. I can't predict when the hot water heater will break. I can't predict when faucets will go. I can't predict, we had an issue with the automatic door opener that ended up being a little bit costly. And we just had a heat pump go. So I'm awaiting the heat pump bill,
All right.
which will not be fun. So that's kind of where we are, is just to make sure that we do have the money in the event that we have an issue. On the last day of the fiscal year, the first year I was the library director, we did not have very much left in the building repair and maintenance budget, like $40 or $50. And a bird flew into a window. And of course, windows are not cheap when they're triple glazed and everything. And that we were scrambling. We ended up paying for some of the window out of state aid. So that's, the bird didn't make it. Anything else?
But based on this though, the last couple of years in building and maintenance, repairs and maintenance, we have left money on the table because we haven't expended it.
Correct. And that would go, that goes back into as free cash.
Yeah.
So
but to Henry's point of like trying to keep up with a building that's 25 years old, it's like, if it's, if we're allocating it, we're budgeting for it, the goal is to be using it to maintain the building.
Yes.
I know I'm speaking, I know I'm saying the obvious.
And I do think to Deb's point there, I think we don't want to be at $40 as we get to the end of it, because we don't know what the unexpected expenses could be. Hot water heater, furnace, those types of things, as the building gets older, can tend to be more expensive items.
Yes, but we also, I don't think, want to be showing that we're, $15,000 a year
Correct,
consistently
yes.
we're not using.
Correct. I think it's
Last year-
as pointed out, it's hard to judge the last year or two based on the closures of the building. I think if we look before, like pre-COVID, at what we were at, I think it's probably a little more accurate to what we should be looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll also mention now, Scott has been working, and I've been working with an engineering company, and I'm sure you're going to ask about capital items. And one of the capital items I sincerely hope we're going to see is the library roof. Because we just paid to repair the current roof, because we obviously cannot have water pouring into the children's room. So we desperately need a roof.
Deb, remind me, has that been patched a couple of times?
We have a company that checks the roof twice a year, makes recommendations and patches. So it's patched twice a year. And in addition to that, it is patched whenever it leaks. The winter of 2014, 2015 was particularly unkind to the roof. And yes, it's patched at least 2 or 3 times a year, someplace. Over the children's room, over my office is another place where we get a lot of water. Sometimes over the high part of the ceiling in the middle of the library, yes. If this building needs anything desperately, it's a roof. Water and books don't mix. We have been incredibly and unbelievably fortunate that we have not had collection damage in the course of the past however many years, especially the winter of 2014, 2015. We had an elaborate blue plastic tablecloth sluicing system in the teen room to route the water away from the bookshelves. It was not pretty. So yes, for capital, I'm just going to say one more time, roof, please.
There'll be an article for it. It's actually
Yes.
Thank you.
pretty much set to go out to bid.
Yes, that's wonderful. So that's the building. And moving along, repairs and maintenance of office equipment is the lease on the public and staff copiers. We'll be spending out of state aid on this line for fiscal 2022 because the old lease expired and new copiers are of course more expensive. So it is what it is. For other property related services, custodial, that includes cleaning type things. We have not done much with cleaning the last couple of years because we got the new carpet. That was typically where we were spending carpet cleaning money. The carpet was included in the capital plan for fiscal 20. So we did not have the carpet cleaned in 2019 because there's not a lot of point in cleaning a carpet that's going to get ripped up. That's also where we pull window washing. And last spring, we had the area under the portico professionally cleaned because we put tables and chairs outside for people to use starting in April. So that's where cleaning above and beyond normal cleaning will come out of that. And we need to have in the spring, we need to have the high windows cleaned, and that's going to be expensive because that's going to be not your average window cleaning company because of the insurance and liability for cleaning windows that are that high.
Yeah, real quick, were you able to receive any money earmarked due to COVID for the additional cleaning?
That got reimbursed. Yes, that's why there's not much in there. That did get reimbursed. That's why it's not expended out of here.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, everything that we could possibly submit for COVID expenses, we submitted. Postage is fairly, we haven't changed that in several years. Our primary mailing now is of overdue notices, letters and things like that, and not even that many overdue notices. Most of those are emailed. Office supplies is the usual, paper clips, pencils, pens, and so on. Computer supplies are primarily printer cartridges, public printers, staff printers, and so on. Our computer maintenance budget pays for software licensing. Wayne does when we buy new computers, Wayne sets them up, and he's a godsend and saves us a great deal of money. Our computers are not, with the exception of a couple that log in through the cloud, are not on the town network. They're on OCLN, the Old Colony Library Network. So our software is paid from our budget because software that we use, for example, for PC reservations or museum passes, hits onto the OCLN network for patron verification, not through the town. So that's software licensing and things like that. Technical supplies are when you borrow a book and it has plastic cover on it, or it has a spine label on it. Technical supplies are anything that is related to the processing of library materials, library cards, library key cards, things like that. Custodial supplies, the obvious: toilet paper, light bulbs, paper towels, things like that, cleaning supplies. This budget, we increased substantially for fiscal 2022 in the anticipation that the state or federal government would not be paying for Purell for the bulk of fiscal 2022. We have Purell. I think we have 15 to 20 bottles of Purell available for patron use, plus a wall dispenser. It's everywhere. And people do use it. We have one at the front of the building. People come in and use it. It's at every computer. We also have alcohol wipes at every computer. And when we were budgeting for 2022 a year ago, I really couldn't anticipate how much we were going to spend on all of these things. So I bumped the budget and then bumped it by 2% again for this coming year. And then the big one, books and magazines. That includes books, magazines, DVDs, as I said, not many of those, or CDs, not so much anymore. It also includes ebooks, e-audio, streaming video. We just joined a new streaming video service called Canopy, and museum passes. Anything that a patron can use and take home is included in the books and materials budget. And that is where the bulk of the library's expense line goes, as it should, and all very heavily used. And Matt, are you going to make your overdrive plug here?
I can if you want me to.
Sure.
My most recent overdrives, classic book, Silas Marner, and a newer book by Anthony Doerr, who a lot of people have read, All the Light We Cannot See, his newer, strangely titled Cloud Cuckoo Land, which has a lot of love for librarians in it, by the way. But Overdrive is fantastic. It's an incredible resource. Gives you access to libraries across all of Massachusetts for ebooks and audiobooks and all kinds of other resources. I highly recommend it to anyone who has not used it or to anyone who is thinking about it.
Yeah,
Certainly
I'll
a
second
huge
that as
asset
well.
during quarantining.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's not even just Overdrive. There's also additional resources as well that for magazines and audiobooks. It's just the
graphic novels,
available resources, and the resources that we're able to share. Outside of OCLN, which my family does a lot to try to find ebooks at other libraries. Just through the Abington Public Library is just really awesome.
For anyone who has watched the recent Amazon Wheel of Time television series, I got all of the audiobooks for the actual Amazon, for not the Amazon TV show, but the actual books of Wheel of Time through Overdrive over the last 3 years, and I've read all 14 of those books through that. So it's a lot that's available. It's a really excellent resource.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. One of the things that we did during lockdown and continue to do is provide telephone. We have helped people get set up using e-resources like Overdrive or Hoopla over the telephone, over Zoom, in the library, which is my favorite place to do that, in the parking lot. We would help people with a tin can and a string if we had to. But e-resources, the ability to expand the library beyond its walls, are a tremendous asset for the town, and wonderful for residents to be able to borrow. We have a wonderful reference librarian who can, if people come in and make an appointment with her, can easily show you how to use things. I will also say that Massachusetts libraries with federal funds, COVID funds, have been offered the opportunity to get hotspots. So we have 5 Wi-Fi hotspots on T-Mobile that we are currently lending to patrons. We will not be paying for them, anything for them, until the fall of 2022. In the fall of 2022, we'll have to pay their monthly fees, but until then, that's been arranged and paid for by the state. Ours started circulating just before Christmas, and the last time I looked, 3 were out and 1 had a hold on it. So that's kind of exciting. We have, thanks to a couple of generous donors in the community, we have some elderly but workable refurbished laptops that people can check out and take home. And over the Christmas and New Year's weekends, we had 2 patrons who came in on Thursday night and checked out a hotspot and a laptop and were able to be connected at home. One point I would like to make about the digital divide before I move on from materials is that although I know it may feel unlikely, there are many residents in this town who do not have access to the internet at home. They don't own a computer. They don't have internet access. We are their link. When we reopened and computer access started again, we had people coming in who had not been able to check their email for months. That's a real thing. The digital divide is very real. And it does happen in our community, and we do provide links for people who need tax forms, who need to deal with Social Security, who need to deal with the court system. All of those things happen in this building on a daily basis. And by having the hotspots and laptops to check out, people who would like to have things that they might wish to handle privately, as in not out on the floor in the library, have the ability to do that too. So I'm really excited about the hotspots.
So Deb, can I just ask you about the laptops that we lend out?
Yeah.
How often is Wayne responsible for making sure those are patched and we have antivirus and any other security software on there? Because if we're providing it to somebody and we take it back and hand it off to somebody else.
Wayne does not check them. When they come back in, staff checks them. We do have antivirus software on them. We have a number of programs on them, and we run them and make sure that they're clean, as well as for privacy issues, deleting browsing history. When people borrow them, they also do sign a disclaimer that, and please remember, they're not on the town network.
No, I'm just thinking about their personal, because you just mentioned social security numbers and all this stuff. Like, people, if they're not sophisticated with it, they leave something behind, or somebody, leaves something behind and hands it off, the next person that picks it up. That's why I just.
We take our responsibility for patron privacy very seriously, and no laptop is checked out until it has effectively been wiped. Browsing history deleted, browser cleaned. We have software that runs and makes sure that there's nothing personal left on that. The public computers too in the library, because people, all kinds of personal information goes onto those. Those have software that every time they shut down, they wipe. There's nothing left on those. So yes, no. Privacy.
But the operating system though, those are getting patched monthly by Microsoft.
Right. We download all the updates.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. No,
great.
we update.
All right. Thank you.
Updating is important.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just as a point, Paul, patron privacy is part of state law. And it is something that as librarians, we do take very seriously, whether it's digital or whether it's simply, so-and-so borrowed a particular book, we won't tell you. It is what people choose to read and explore intellectually is between the person and the material. And we don't have a place in that, and neither does anybody else in the public.
That's awesome. Thank you. Awesome.
Okay, that's the librarian's soapbox. Okay. Dues and fees are professional dues and fees, and the last few years with the bizarreness, we honestly have not purchased memberships for Mass Library Association, and that is something that I did put in. It's in this year's budget, and we will do so, and it's in next year's, and we will do so. I'm hoping that staff might actually get to go to an in-person conference this year. That would be nice, maybe in the spring. So that's where that is. And is that our last line? I think that's it.
Nice.
I think it is.
Questions for Deb?
So Deb, we know the roof for capital. Do you have anything else for capital or warrant items?
One of the things that I've mentioned to Scott, and I mentioned at the meeting, finance team meeting, is I would like some sort of study to give us an idea about the life of things in the building, particularly the boiler. I really don't want to be guessing on the life of the boiler. It's 25. I have no idea how long a commercial boiler lasts. And I've mentioned that to Scott, and I know there are other departments that and other places that we've wondered about that. So that would be the only other thing, the roof first and foremost. And then if there is money to have somebody, and I don't even know who would do that, an engineering firm, a building consultant. I think that's more Scott's area of expertise, far more Scott's area of expertise than mine. But that is something I would like to know, or at least have an idea so we can plan. how long is the boiler going to live? How long is we just got new fans for the building, but the external part, the outside part of the HVAC system, there's what's the usable life of a public toilet? I mean, I don't know. They're 25. They look okay to me, but these are things I'd like to know.
Well, that sounds to me like a logical part of the capital planning process that I've never really thought about before. So it's a great point, Deb.
Thank you.
I wonder if that's something, a service like a town planner.
No, we actually.
Look
we
into
just did
those
it-
types of things, or is that more of a maintenance?
We just did it on the town building. And it was exactly as Deb said, is we used an engineering firm. But I think I want to say we had spent $12,000 on doing it on this building. And it's a pretty thorough report on basically, where we are with the roofs, where we are with windows, where we are with doors, just what David said, it's a life expectancy thing. It is worthwhile to do. And as we were meeting with the Collins Center over the next couple months on, our capital plan, and that may be part of it, that we want to do an all-out survey. It's certainly, I think if Deb had money left over in her budget for repairs like she's had in other years, we may even look at that and contract with the same vendor that we used over here, which is also the same vendor who's doing her roof, to do that survey for that building. I think it would be less because obviously they wouldn't be looking at the roof at this point.
Scott, when you did that for the town hall, what line item were you able to use
We
that
didn't
out
take
of?
it out of the line item. I don't remember how I think what we did is we had gone, last year we were kicking around the idea that initially we had warrant articles for the library roof and for windows and doors, I think, over here at Town Hall. And I had asked that maybe we put the brakes on that until we could bring in a professional, because we were just working off of guest numbers. It didn't make sense to me. I wanted to bring in an engineering firm. So I think what we did is we had appropriated it through town meeting, and we might have lumped them together in a warrant article, which is probably how I would recommend we do it after we've met with the Collins Center and we've got some recommendations. It may be the following, whether it's a fall or another town meeting, that we look at doing all the buildings that we have.
Thank
Which
you.
obviously would be, it's a worthwhile, if they've never done it here, and I'd have to look around. I'm tending to think, since this building in the library's only 25 years old, the fire stations will, John will tell us about that, but we all know where we're at with the fire stations. The police station, I think, is 10 or 12 years old. So, it's probably really just something that hasn't had to have been done, but it is time to definitely do it on a few of these buildings.
Thank you.
Barbara, if I could jump in for a second, it's Henry.
Sure.
One of the things we looked for last year when we went through this discussion was not just the roofing material itself, but do we need more insulation? Were we strong enough to hold solar panels? I mean, there were other questions that we added. And that's why we fought, and Scott was in agreement with us on getting an engineer to look at it and then give us the RFPs and the estimates properly, so that we could do this thing once and not for the next 50 years,
And do we want to put a Tesla roof on there?
I will say the engineer asked me if I wanted to go up on the roof at one point. I declined. There was a book called The Librarian on the Roof. I am not that librarian. Just saying.
Do you fiddle?
No.
That would surely be a liability, Deb.
Yeah, definitely. Not a good thing. The only other capital thing we have is in the revolving fund grid. We have our revolving fund articles and that's it for capital.
The standard revolving funds that you
Standard.
always have. Yeah.
Yep.
If anyone else doesn't have a question, I did have one more question. Does anyone else have a question, though?
No.
Everybody's good.
I
Dan,
just,
I am
sorry.
just- Oh, go ahead.
I was just curious, Scott, did you say we had a proposal on the roof, or we put that out for a bid, right?
It's going out to bid.
Okay.
My guess, I think the estimate, and Henry, maybe you or Deb remember, it's probably in that 800,000 to $1 million range. I don't remember what we were guesstimating it at, but the bid docs are all put together. The engineering firm's doing all that. Actually, they're only waiting for me to give them some legal documents to go on the front end of it, and then they'll put it out to bid. We'll have a number that will become a warrant article number for town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, at that point, will we have an idea of the life expectancy of a new roof?
Yeah, whatever we put on there, I'm sure it's going to be, 35 to 50-year roof anyways, but I'll take a look at what she had designed for it.
Okay.
But I would imagine that it'll depend on what we want to pay for the warranty too, because typically
Right.
the longer that you want your roof to last, the more that you're going to pay for the material and B for the warranty. So.
Right.
And because I know that people listening, especially people who have put a new roof on their own home, will ask, I know it's a very big building, but why is it that high an estimate for this particular building and this particular roof?
Because it is a very, it's much bigger than it looks. I think if you looked at an aerial photo of it, but yeah, it's a very big building. It has a lot of valleys. There are several, or maybe at least 2 flat areas that tie into it. So there's a lot of flashing details in, and yeah, I mean, the roof has to be stripped down. It's got to be taken off and cleaned up, and
the valleys have been problematic too. So in my feedback to the engineer, I really emphasized that the valleys need to be waterproof and stronger than they are. And I think that's going to cost some money. But again, water and books don't mix well.
Mm.
And Matt, for your reference, it's approximately a 16,000 square foot building.
Thanks, Henry.
Thank you.
So my question, Deb, I am just curious, how is I don't think I asked this last year, the no late fee. How is that working out?
That is the best thing we ever did. And I am so excited to say that libraries all around us who stopped charging fines during COVID, towns began to realize what a ridiculous thing library fines were. We get books back at a better rate. We have a lesser rate of long overdues and a lesser rate of billing, which is phenomenal. People and more importantly, people don't feel shamed when they come to
I
the
definitely
library.
think there's a psychological aspect to it. I definitely, when you first said you were going to do that, I thought, ooh, I feel like you're not going to get books back.
No,
But,
they come back. I think people are a lot more comfortable. There are people who I think would check them out and then they would accrue fines, and then they didn't want the embarrassment of returning them, but they didn't want to just throw them in the book drop and pretend the fines wouldn't exist. I think we had books that rode around in people's trunks for years, thinking I'll return them someday, and someday never came. People are much happier bringing them back. In terms of providing service at the desk, the staff can talk to people about books, make recommendations. It's a far more positive customer service experience. And having gone fine free, I would never go back. I have a couple colleagues who are clinging to their fines, and I just keep saying to them, you really need to come and work our circ desk and deal with for a week and deal with patrons who do not have to pay fines, and see how happy they are. They come in, they bring things back, they take things out. And it's always to some extent been, library fines for years have been regressive in that people who borrow books, if you have a mom or a dad who borrows, 12 or 15 picture books for their children, the major point of a library, at least for us, is encouraging children to read. So then the books are late coming back and it's 10 cents a day per book, 15 books, that's $1.50 a day. Even when they max out at, you know, a $5 fine times 15 books, that's $75 in fines. That's ridiculous. And that is not, and then what that happens is if they return them and they pay the fine, or they didn't pay the fine, they might not take more books. And that's ridiculous. I also want to make clear for the people at home, we are not talking about lost materials. People do still pay for lost materials because library materials are the property of the town. If someone loses a book, if their puppy eats it and things like that, they do have to pay for that. But that's different. That's not a punitive fine. That's compensating the town for the loss.
Absolutely. Well, happy to hear that. Thank you very much, Deb.
Thank you for asking.
Any more questions for Deb or Henry? All right, Deb, thank you. Henry, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Yes,
We
thank you both
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
All of
And
you.
I will add at the end, anyone that wants to find out more about the building, the newer members, and wants to come for a tour, reach out to us. And even in COVID, we can take care of you.
Thank you so much, Henry.
Yeah, very appreciative.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to our last department for tonight. Sorry for making you wait, John.
Yeah,
but
sorry,
the
John.
Fire Department, Chief Nuttall.
Page 36 of the document is where fire starts.
Excellent. Thank you. And Matt, I'm right there with you. I'm not quite as fighting what you may have, but I'm fighting something, which is why I'm actually home tonight and not in my office, which I usually am. And as soon as we're done with this, I'm taking some NyQuil and handing the town over to the deputy fire chief. And hopefully everything's fine.
NyQuil
It also may
helped me.
just be residual smoke from the fire yesterday, so I'm not quite sure. But
NyQuil helped me a lot last night, so I'm sending a plug out to
I
NyQuil as
I
well.
don't normally do this, but I'm trying to get over it.
Really hope
I'm
you feel
hoping-
better fast, John.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm hoping this may be the easiest budget I've ever presented since I've been chief, because basically it is a level service budget from FY22. There's a few minor contractual increases throughout on their current contract, mainly just longevity in a couple of non-union employees. The firefighters union contract does expire June 30th, so this budget does not reflect that. I do have a concern on that because I know that we're looking at, a potential 5% cut. That would be in addition to that, should that occur. Hopefully it doesn't. So basically there's no increase in staff. There's no changes. It's a level service. The new captain that we got into the budget this fiscal year has worked out extremely well with fire prevention and training. And he's been busy doing that. And to be honest with you, the fire prevention division, which is the deputy fire chief and a fire captain who is assigned days, not on a shift with the other four captains. We've been very busy with some really complex issues in town that they've tended to evolve kind of since the pandemic. And I think some of this is just people paying attention more to what either the neighbors are doing or whatnot. So we've been busy working very closely with the building department, the board of health, the police in many instances, the town manager, and certainly town council. We're really trying to make sure that there's been a few properties in town that they're back on track to following, the state, town, and local codes for everybody's safety. We've done a lot of work with that. And the addition of that day captain, that has definitely helped the deputy fire chief to do that. So we're happy with that. We also have a lot of large new potential projects still coming into town that are very labor intensive. They spent a lot of time today with the Zero Summer Street folks. Should that project go through, we want to make sure that we have everything that the fire department needs for that. So beyond that, there's really no other change. Incrementally, some of the expenses went up slightly, prior to a potential cut. We're in really good shape, to be honest with you, equipment-wise, although the equipment's old. So let me start with the buildings. We do have, I think, the two oldest buildings in town, with the exception of the Frollio School. We run them 24 hours a day. We have never shut down during any, over the last couple of years. If anything, we've increased our work there. The buildings are tired. However, last year, we replaced both boilers in both buildings. So we have 2 brand new state-of-the-art gas heaters. And I thank you and the residents again for supporting us on that, because my fear a year ago was, should we have another shutdown or our vendors shut down and these boilers break down, which they consistently did chronically for years, we're not going to get somebody to come in to fix them, and we're going to freeze pipes. So we were able to get those done last year. It was literally a year ago now. We're getting that done. They've worked out extremely well. That should be a reduction in the gas. However, I didn't want to cut too much into my gas line because we really haven't seen it yet. We haven't had a full cycle. So I'm trying to be conservative with that. Do you want me to go line by line, or do you have questions? Or like I said, it's really the same budget with the exception of, should the union and the town, come to an agreement, to begin July 1st, that would be whatever that is.
John, if you want to go over any lines that have increases or just the changes, and then if anyone has questions on any other line items, absolutely feel free to jump in and ask. Will that work?
There's really no major changes on these. One of the other changes we did, and we did it within the budget this fiscal year, really in going into next fiscal year, it really didn't affect it, is we moved the deputy fire chief out of the union. The union agreed to that. There was some shifting of, different salary accounts and whatnot, but the bottom line of the budget, we did this internally. And that's reflected as well for this new budget going forward as well. I do have, it appears at least one of my senior members is going to be retiring at the end of this month. So I'm probably going to tweak this budget slightly by July 1st. Realistically, it's going to be a wash, because a new firefighter coming in is going to have a lower pay rate, and he's going to have lower, or she is going to have lower vacation accrued. However, I also have to pay to send them to the fire academy.
Right.
The fire academy is free, but I have to backfill the position while they're there. So really, it's going to be a wash. To be honest with you, the following year, we may see a slight savings on that. I do have another firefighter that I'm not counting on him retiring, but he may. And that would also really realistically be a wash too. There's really not going to be a major savings to the budget on these. Past years, we did do this. We had a number of senior employees retire a number of years ago, and that really did affect the budget. It reduced it. In these instances, for just a couple of, kind of complex reasons, it's really going to be a wash. It's going to be negligible, the bottom line of the budget. But whatever those are, if and when they do certainly retire, at that point, I'll tweak this somewhat, and I'll let Sonia know. And Andrew going, the accountant going forward, prior to the actual time when you vote on that.
Okay, great, John.
Yeah. Just, I see a couple places where there are, it's one place where there's an increase, the holiday pay budget, it's up 15-20% this year. Is that a contractual thing, or? From 120 to 149?
Yeah, I see the number. Mine's not reading out 20% on that, but I think that would be, I think, a reflection of the deputy fire chief's contract. I think that's the main bulk of that.
Oh, okay. Right.
And there was a couple other firefighters, they're starting to increase in seniority. I've had a couple more firefighters go up in additional week. That's what it is as well. They've earned an additional week contractually. So, and we hired a number of them at the same time, and I believe that's also a reflection of that.
Okay, and then I gotta find
that. That's also vacation. I apologize. The vacation as well.
The other budget. I'm not sure what that is, but it's 61,000, and
yep, I can tell you what that is.
Okay, we've never spent nearly that much.
A lot of this has to do with, I just want to confirm this because I believe it's 5190. Hold on one second. I've got a separate working sheet that's a little bit more detailed this year. Yeah, this is professional improvement time. Each member gets a total of 36 hours of either overtime or coverage, which would also be overtime for fire academy classes. A lot of these have been online lately, so a lot more of them have been taking it. This is contractual, as well as they can also carry over some of the time that's not been used. This went up slightly because we did add that one additional firefighter, the captain.
But
And
we
John,
haven't
is
spent
that
it.
is that a situation where we are contractually obliged to budget for a specific amount, whether
Correct.
whether they take it or not? So
That is correct.
we budget the amount that would be the max that the contract allows them to take.
That is
Is
correct.
it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So Chris, that's one of those areas where we have to budget for what they could potentially take.
Okay.
And then whatever they don't take comes back to
And what line
free
item is
cash at the
that?
end. That's the other budget line item, the account number
Yep.
001220051900500 and more.
And
zeros.
contractually, you have to show that you'd be able to pay it. So you have to
Correct.
budget for it. You
Yep.
have to show that you'd be able to pay the maximum amount through your contract negotiations in good faith and on paper.
Correct. Basically, the entire salary portion of the budget is contractual for the most part. You know, I mean, there's a little here and there, you know.
Even if nobody
storm
ever,
coverage. I'm sorry.
even though only, we only spend half of it every year, we can't recognize that we only spend half of it every year.
The last 2 years, again, there weren't a lot of in-person classes and not everything was geared up as much online as they are now.
No, I'm going 2019 and 20.
Yeah, John, the document we're looking at now goes back to FY19. And I think
Okay.
the most we've spent on that was about 26,000. But the budget is
And again, it's
significantly more than that each year.
Well, if something was to happen, and they decide that they're all gonna start
Correct.
using this. we're gonna be in
Correct.
trouble, Big trouble.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Then you figure
And
out-
that's the
Yeah.
concern and the reason that we have to budget it the way that we do.
Again, we're not doing something else that we could do because of this, but it goes to free cash at the end of the year, I guess, so maybe it
Correct.
doesn't.
Yeah, there's kind of give and take with items like that.
The other thing on that as well is if for some reason this fiscal year I'm concerned, we're still under the the recommendations for COVID, whatnot, keeping up, but we also do not have the COVID funds like we had last year. So we have to follow the same rules, but now we're not reimbursed like we were the last year with COVID. So now it's coming out of my budget. So for some reason, we have a very difficult winter coming up, which I'm hoping we don't, but a lot of my colleagues are concerned about the same thing. If people have to quarantine just for whatever reason, that's coming out of my budget. So what may not be spent on one line item, it's probably going to get used up in another line item that may be overspent. Ultimately, the entire budget is to maintain the 6-member person, the 6 members on shift at all times. We can operate the 2 ambulances. That's what the entire budget's predicated on. And like Matt and I think Barbara said at the end, if at the end of the year, if money's not expended, it rolls back in towards the town too.
Yeah,
Back to free cash, back to the general. A lot of this is based on, we may have a mild winter. We could get another winter like 2014-15, where we literally had 10 feet of snow. God, I hope not.
Fingers
But you
crossed
just
that
don't
we
know.
don't.
Yeah, so, some of this, we kind of plan for the worst and hope for the best. And it's an imperfect science, not knowing what injuries we're going to get, what sicknesses we're going to get, how many incidents we're going to get, how many times I have to bring in off-duty help to supplement when the crews are just maxed out on calls, which has been a lot lately. We've been extremely busy running both ambulances. In fact, we had a meeting this week at my department with temporarily just kind of changing up our responses with the 2 ambulances to kind of give a little bit of relief to one ambulance crew that is the primary ambulance is out of station 2. We're starting to burn out that crew as well as the ambulance. So we're going to rotate them a little bit more. There's reasons we don't do this all the time because we're also cross-staffing fire apparatus, and namely the tower truck with that one. But at the same time, I think January and February perhaps into March are going to be extremely busy for this department, and we're already seeing that.
Yeah.
I know we've talked several times over the past several years that I've been on about the ambulance budget in general and about call volume and receipts being kind of going gradually down over the last several years or over a stretch of several years. Have the receipts come up because of the increased volume you're seeing?
The increased volume has definitely increased. I think I defer to Sonia on that. She may have a more updated figure, because I don't have my computer from the station in my office in front of me to be able to look that up. I can tell you that we also put in every year for a Medicare reimbursement. It's not a grant, it's a reimbursement. It's a lot of work to get it done. I'm anticipating 117,276 to come back from FY21, which is up a little bit from the year previous to that, I think, because of the call volume. Now, that figure tends to typically get reduced somewhat by the state or the feds when they go through this, but that would be going back into the general as well to help offset, wherever you choose to use that. Typically, we get that in June, so it should be ready. I'm hoping for the new fiscal year.
Can we look at the overtime budget?
And we have, there's different types of overtime, and I like to explain this every year because it gets confusing.
Yes.
And I'm glad you brought that up. So there's basically three buckets, if you will, different types of overtime. There's everything's made on this budget to maintain 6 members on shift, on duty at all times, 24 hours a day. If any of those members contractually have their holiday, vacation time, they each get a personal day. There's some bereavement time. If they're injured, if they're at the fire academy, any number of reasons that they could be absent from not being on shift, I have to backfill that position with another member off duty. That is overtime to maintain that. So there's that shift coverage type of overtime. And again, that can be vacation, that could be holiday, that could be sick, that could be line of duty injury. It could be a number of things. It could be training for like fire academy. Another type of overtime is when we get very busy, we have multiple calls which occur daily, which means we have 2 or 3 calls going on at the same time. I may have both the ambulances at 2 different hospitals, or they're both at a hospital. We need to bring members off duty in temporarily, hourly, to backfill the station for the next call to be ready for another call when it happens. The same can occur during large storms, whether it's a blizzard or whether it's, like the storm we had in October. We have to bring extra people in because we're extremely busy. In October, we had, I think, 6 pieces of apparatus out at the same time, just chasing those calls during that windstorm, that event that came down that knocked out all the power. Fires, certainly. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, we both had building fires. Yesterday, our engine went to a second alarm fire in Rockland. While my crews are over there, I have to supplement, the fire stations to bring other off-duty people in so that we still have something for the rest of the residents in case another call comes in. So there's that type of overtime. That's called callback. We're calling off-duty members back into the station to man apparatus to get ready to go. The third type of overtime that we see is really for training. And this is either if they're at the fire academy, they're assigned to the fire, a new firefighter is assigned to the fire academy for about 11 weeks, and we have to backfill that position. That's similar to the first type when they're out. Although contractually, and this was in that other category, each union member has 36 hours of potential time to be used, either if they're off duty and they go to an approved fire academy or similar class. I personally approve every single one of these. Every hour has to be approved by me. And if it's something that occurs while they're off duty, because sometimes you can't, the class is already scheduled, you can't control the date. They can go and they can get time and a half for that, up to 36 hours. Or if the class that they want to take is during their shift that they're scheduled to work, they can go, but now somebody else is coming in to cover for them. That's technically a training category. So those are the 3 main types of overtime. And it's all just to maintain you know, the 6-man shifts, or to supplement us when we get very busy or have a large incident, and some of this is contractual.
So we've gone over this back and forth most years. But since the better staffing, is the overtime budget less of the backfilling?
No, we're still backfilling just because the call volume is so high. Are you talking backfilling like with, let me rephrase your, I think I know what you're trying to get. With the extra staff, we, knock on wood, have actually seen a reduction in line of duty injuries. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, so your staffing was low before, and you are having to constantly backfill for injuries and those types of things. And so the overtime budget has always been, you know, a subject because will the better staffing cut down the overtime budget?
Yeah, I think Barbara's overall question, it's a question that's commonly asked about both fire and police, is if we add staff, how much does that decrease the need for overtime? And the staffing budget going up, the overtime budget does not necessarily come down a commensurate amount, but it
Right.
comes,
So we're not really
what
seeing
amount
that,
does it
but-
come down
Exactly.
is kind of the
So,
question.
a lot of the larger towns and the cities do this. So in other words, again, my budget's predicated on maintaining 6. That's the magic number to make this work, to have 2 engines in a tower truck properly staffed, cross-staffed with 2 ambulances, but also bring in revenue to help offset the town. To maintain that, yes, we use overtime to fill those shifts. One theory that we're very close kind of to the tipping point at this point, just as the department grows and the overall budget grows, everything does, the dollar figures grow. Let's say we hire 8 or 10 more firefighters. And, you know, now theoretically we have 8 firefighters on shift, and we can drop down to 6 so we don't fill the first 2. There's a savings in overtime, but it's not a bottom line savings realistically to the overall budget.
Mhm.
In fact, it may increase it because you also have to take into account all of their benefits that are not even seen in this budget, that is seen at town hall. That's one issue. Another issue is you're always going to have some overtime because you may still have somebody drop. If for some reason you had a shift of 8, you're going to drop to 6, but there's, for whatever reason, that whole shift is out for a wedding, sickness, whatever, you're still going to have some overtime. Even the cities use some overtime to maintain. There's a minimum number they have to maintain. The other issue I have, and I'm not using this to try to get a fire station. And I want to be perfectly clear on this because it's going to sound like it, but it's not. And I've had these conversations with the town manager. I literally have nowhere to put new personnel. I literally have no locker space in either station if I wanted to increase staff. We're that maxed out. I have no place to hang more equipment. I literally have no place to put more personnel in either building.
Yeah, not too long
That's
ago,
another limiting factor.
we did do the tour not too long ago again, and running into more issues, even, you know, in more recent years with male and female, and
Mhm.
having separate quarters, you know, facilities and that type of thing. So we do know that. My other question is, you will not be getting the reimbursements like you had said through COVID, but you're still going to have to follow, and the employees will have to still follow like quarantining times and that type of thing. Do you have concerns with
great
the
concerns. Yeah, I
overtime
have-
budget that the amount that you've budgeted for overtime? And still having to, you know, you could have a whole team out because they all work together. You know, they could all be out for whatever the number of days ends up being, whether it's 10 days or you know, whatever.
Yes, that is a concern, and we've been watching that from day one, beginning this fiscal year, really when the money ran out. knowing that this is coming, I don't think any of us realized it was going to be quite what we're seeing now. We were hoping all this was going to get behind us. It's not. I have 2 members out right now, actually. They're okay, but they're following protocol.
Well, that's what I mean. Even if they're not sick, they still have
Correct.
to, you still have to follow all of the guidelines.
Correct. And, they have relieved that somewhat with the timeout, depending on their status, contact, are they sick, are they not sick? There's a whole flow chart realistically, but absolutely, that is a concern. And it could be their family member that they're.
Does this budget take that into account? Was that something that you?
No, it doesn't. When we set this budget a year ago, it is what it is. We're watching it, we're being careful. I'm cognizant of this. And as we said earlier, perhaps if we don't use all of the funds in one line item for whatever reason, that may go to offset a negative in one of the other, like if it was the sick, for instance, to offset that to get me through the fiscal year. Because I obviously want to stay within the budget and I want to maintain the status quo service for the residents. So we're watching this very closely. I have a firefighter retiring. I'm planning on, as I said, so that's going to be an opening. However, until I hire a new firefighter, even though we're filling that firefighter shift at time and a half, the actual physical firefighter who's retired, that's off the salary line. So it's really costing me half time, not time and a half, until I hire somebody, which is probably going to be in the spring. In that point, I'll end up kind of covering while we train the new firefighter and filling that again. But that's the other reason I'm pushing that off a little bit, to kind of make sure that we're okay. There's a lot of balls in the air right now kind of being juggled to make sure we get through this. I could have 1 or 2 line of duty injuries or just sicknesses. I have firefighters that they have some surgery scheduled for just life, things happen. And that's off a little bit now because the hospitals are shut down, but I know that that's coming. So there's a lot of things kind of in the air that we're watching very closely to make sure that I just want to get through the fiscal year. I keep my members really updated on this as well, so that they kind of have a clue what's going on, for whatever reasons, maybe, just so that they understand it. I don't want to blindside them with anything, but we're all kind of working together as a team, really under my leadership. I'm responsible for the budget to get us through this fiscal year with this budget that was voted and maintain the same amount of service for the residents.
Thanks, John. Anyone else with questions about overtime or any other?
John, what makes up the other benefits line?
I've kind of got 2. So which line item is that? Just show me.
5194.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
You budgeted 92,905.
Yep, and I'll break this down for you. The way that the system, it didn't break it down quite as clearly by him. So this is a number of things. The largest thing on this is, and again, this is all contractual, there's tuition reimbursement. There's $33,000 to go into tuition reimbursement for the members. It's kind of a version of a Quinn bill, but it's not the Quinn bill. It's been in their contract for years. If they go to college for certain approved courses in matriculated programs toward fire, nursing, emergency management, assuming they get the appropriate grade, they can get reimbursed for those classes. Now, this tends to be a spike some years. There's some years I actually overspend this, because when I had a number of new firefighters, they were new, they were eager, they're into it. They were all going to college, and I actually overspent this a couple of times. That's kind of tapered back off again. But now we've hired a few more, and I'm expecting that to kind of go back up again. So that's a little bit of a wave line. But contractually, we have that just in case. Below that, we have contractual clothing allowance. Each member gets $1,000 towards uniform, shirts, pants, hat, all different uniform things. And those are all approved by me, myself, and my administrative assistant. They have to buy certain things. There's $28,000 for that. There's a couple other contractual items. The union gets $2,500 a year for weightlifting equipment, basically, to maintain their cache of equipment that we have between the 2 stations. It's basically, it kind of evolved from a wellness program years ago when this really has worked out the best, I think, for everybody involved. The remainder of this is under protective clothing. And even though these are physical items, it is under the salary portion of the budget because they're personal protective gear. This is fire coats, fire boots, fire helmets, the firefighting masks, in some protective rescue, in other personal protective equipment. Like now we're into ballistic gear. One year we had a capital grant, a capital request that outfitted the entire department. But now that we have members kind of coming and going, I have to, you know, I'm absorbing that from the budget. That covers that. So this is kind of a number of just different items that we, you know, other benefits, which is what it's titled, that's still under the salary line item.
Okay.
The reason I budget for, and I apologize, Paul, the reason I budget for extra coats and boots and like that, there's a couple of reasons. We actually damage them. These are very expensive. A complete firefighting ensemble is like a NASA spacesuit, and I'm literally being serious on that. A helmet is about $500. A fire coat and pants together, they're about $2,500. The boots are about $300. The gloves are about $100. The entire setup is quite expensive, as well as, you know, the Scott Air masks tend to break. Just, you know, they do take a beating in fires. Or motor vehicle accidents when we're using the jaws. Believe it or not, we tend to tear it then. And we will repair these as needed. Sometimes they're done. The other reason I have to replace them at times is they're limited to a lifespan of 10 years per NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. And we've tracked that really well. And, you know, we've got a complete list of everybody's ensemble. Everybody has 2 sets of gear. In case one set of gear gets damaged or contaminated, you might get diesel fuel, gasoline, biohazards on it, or it has to go out to be repaired. They'll have another set of gear immediately available so they can go right back to work. This is to maintain them as we go, so that I don't have to every 10 years, I'm trying to avoid doing this. What we had to do one year is a large capital thing to replace all of the gear in the department. I'm trying to, you know, replace these as needed now throughout my budget, as opposed to a large purchase every 10 years, which for whatever reason, you get off that schedule anyway with retirements, new hires. You know, sometimes the firefighters outgrow the gear, which doesn't mean they get bigger. We've actually had firefighters lose weight and their gear was too big for them, so we had to replace it. They can get taller too, but.
Okay. And just what, on the in-service training, you mentioned about the other benefits, the tuition, you know, taking advantage of that. Is there an expectation that the in-service training is gonna, you know, because there's been years where you haven't used all of it. It's been down. You haven't expended a.
Are we still in the same line item? I just want to make sure.
It's a different, no, it's the one above it, the in-service training.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, that's what I thought. Again, a couple of years, we haven't used all of this based on a number of things. Last year, everything was just shut down. Even ourselves, you know, we ironically did a number of training. Some of it was reimbursable with COVID because it was COVID training. Some of it, we just weren't able to do some of the large trainings we normally do because we weren't gathering. Even, you know, going back to 2019, I mean, a lot of these I've actually overspent, to be honest with you. You're looking at the 5193 in-service training budget, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to, you know, and these aren't like mass trainings where we get the whole department together, and we do that at times, but realistically, these are smaller trainings. Well, just going to get one of the work groups to try to work together, or, you know, they're doing some training with Plymouth County Technical Rescue, Plymouth County Technical Dive Team. That's all under this line item, actually. There's training for the firefighters that we have that go into these schools. That's actually under, you know, there's training for that. There's a whole category of this, but this typically does get spent.
Okay. Is there a requirement for hours for like professional education for the firefighters?
Not for the firefighters, but there is for the EMS. There is for the paramedics.
Okay.
And that is also covered here. And some of that actually a number of years ago was rolled into their pay. It was a little bit different. They kind of go to some of the classes now without getting reimbursed. But there is still some we have to cover their cost as well. But yeah, there's a minimum, number of continuing ed that the paramedics have to take, EMTs and paramedics have to take. Firefighters, ironically, not as much. Although realistically, when we're getting new equipment, whether it's new apparatus and you have to learn how to train on that, or just any type of new equipment or even medical equipment, if we get a new CPR device or whatnot, each group will train on that as well. We have to know how to use it when we get it. Some of this we can do on duty, and we do try. The problem with trying to do training on duty, it's Murphy's Law. You get the whole group together, we're going over, say it's a Lucas CPR device, whatever, and you're gonna get call after call after call, and you just keep getting bounced out of the station. That becomes a real issue. So when it's a real important portion of training, we'll try to take that shift, we'll do it with firefighters off shift so that they're not getting constantly interrupted by, emergency calls that they have to go to. Because otherwise you really break down the core training and they're really not going to get that message. Other trainings we can do on duty, and we do. There are some trainings, if we're following a PowerPoint presentation on electrical hazards, for instance, you can follow it, you get to slide 15, you go out for a call, you come back an hour later, okay, let's continue where we left off. Some things you can do that. Some of the hands-on practical stuff, like an ice rescue drill, if you're in the boat, if we have an abandoned building, and we're actually going to do training on roof ventilation or interior wall breaching, where you're physically putting a hole in the wall and crawling through it. That's extremely difficult to do on duty. Even the cities don't do that. The cities will typically just take an engine or a ladder company and just put them on a service, and you're assigned to training for the day. We don't have that luxury. We're just not that big.
Okay. I just have one additional question. I want to thank you for your time, John. It's been excellent. On computer maintenance. What's in that?
Excellent question. I figured this would come up. Wayne does yeoman's work for our department as well. Matt, I'm not going to sing his praises because nobody wants to hear me sing, but I will praise Wayne for everything he does. And a lot of the items do come out of his budget. However, we do have computers throughout different portions of the job as well. Our cardiac monitors, that actually gets into telephone as well. The reason the telephone cards are high, there's a little bit back and forth. We have computer tablets and all the apparatus in the ambulances. Those were purchased from a grant by one of our firefighter paramedics, but now we have to maintain those. So as you can imagine, if they break, I need funding to be able to replace those now. I can't put that on Wayne. Our radio equipment, if you go into the dispatch room at our fire station, even though dispatch is done by Holbrook, we still have the same equipment because we have our own base radios too. And it's all computerized, so even it's technically it's a radio and there's a radio line item too. They kind of flow back and forth somewhat together, as well as a couple of the licenses. Wayne has picked up more of the licensing. Last year we saw, and one of the reasons I increased this somewhat is we saw a lot of new licensing in computer programs for tracking COVID for our ambulance and engine crews, so that we kind of have a clue going into a situation, just to give us a heads up. It's completely confidential. Nobody knows this, but we have to kind of know. So we kind of changed our operations, and we had to get some fairly expensive software to keep that going. Last year it was cheap because it was funded by COVID. This year we eat it. So that's one of the reasons there's an increase on this going forward.
Okay. Thank you. I'm all set, Barbara. Thank you.
Okay, great, Paul. Anybody else? I
If I
have a
j-
couple questions, but
Yeah, I
anyone
just
else?
had a couple quick questions, basically just on the utilities. I don't know if I missed this explanation earlier, but it looks like your line items for like 5210, 5480 deal with utilities, and there's been no expenditures this year. So just curious as to that.
So the 5210 is electricity, and the town has
Looked like you had 28 and change budgeted for that, but nothing came out yet.
Yeah,
Scott
I
or
was
Sonia, can I defer to you
I was
on
gonna
how we're paying
ask.
the electric?
I was going to ask about that, John, because I know a couple of years ago we consolidated the electric budgets to one primary one, but I thought it was before what we have listed in here for your electric budget. So
The previous accountant was still asking for pretty much what our actuals were per department, and I believe that's what that is. Scott, are you or
Yeah,
Sonia?
I'll
you
have
able
to, yeah, I'll have to review it with Sonia and.
Okay.
Oh, actually,
Go
what
back
I'm,
in the notes.
so what I'm seeing on here is we have the 2019, the FY19 number, and then FY20 and 21 disappear on there. So it jumps from 19 to 22. So I think what you were providing was FY22, what your amount was. Nothing is coming out of the fire department budget for that. So I don't think there should be the 28,000 budgeted there, because I think that the town-wide electric budget is in another line item in another section of the budget.
And I believe the way last year when Sue, the accountant, was here, she asked us for that, and I think she just transferred that right out into whatever that larger line item was. I think they may be doing the same thing for the gas for heat budget as well.
Yeah, I believe.
So it just hasn't come out of your, the line item hasn't been removed.
Right.
I believe so.
Correct. Yeah, and Tanya and
We
I.
have not paid, the fire department has not paid an electric bill for about a year since we did this. So it's, you know, it's all being, you know, we send the invoices up to town hall and they're taking care of it. So I believe that's it, but they still wanted to know what our actuals were. And I believe that's what that is.
But it shouldn't be in the budget.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Drew, there was
Hoping I'm
another
correct on that.
one that you were asking
Yeah, there was,
about?
it was 50, I think it was the same thing with 5480. The line item, it was another utility, I think it was a gas. Yes, so 31.
30,
Sorry, it was 5480,
up
but it's
higher, yeah.
31,000, yeah.
okay, now that is different. That is, the 5480, that's fire gas and oil, which is, for the-
Station, right?
that's fuel for the vehicles. No, that's fuel for
Okay.
the fire apparatus, the ambulances, the engines, the administrative vehicles. That's all of the, just the fuel. That's
So
the
do
gas
we-
pump at town hall. It town. The
So the
DPW.
the FY22 number that we have for currently expended is 0. So I'm guessing that's just something's not tracked right so far this year.
I didn't come up with, yeah, I think they just haven't entered it yet. I think this document that we're using just was put together for, you know, the purpose of looking what we're doing, not what we've spent so far with this fiscal year. They just weren't included yet with FY22 for some reason.
Yeah, it probably just hasn't been updated as far as, and this was done.
Yeah, I think, does the highway
It's
department
coming.
usually do the purchase of the
Yes, they do.
gas there, and then you kind of buy it from the highway department? So maybe you just, like, there hasn't been that portion of it taking place in the budget document yet.
They send us like it's like pretty much
Bill,
every couple
right?
of months, they'll send us an invoice
Yeah.
for how much we have expended, and we just reduce that from that internally so that we know
Yep.
what we have left.
Yep.
If I was in my office, I could tell you exactly what we've got in that right now, but I don't, so I apologize.
So Drew, does that make sense?
Yep, okay,
Good.
thank you.
Anyone else with questions?
Similarly,
Chief.
there's another account, other property service. I think it's way above. It's the other
It's
way.
5290. It's the middle of page 38.
And that's a lot of just, that's like maintaining our ventilation system for the exhaust ventilation system at the stations, maintaining like the overhead doors. We've got them working, but we almost had to have an emergency request to replace one of the extremely expensive overhead doors at Station 2, but we got it working again. So that's just, again, it's building repair maintenance, but it's kind of some of the specific, it's like our Scott air filling machine when we go to maintain that. It's kind of more specific items on things like that.
And do we budget that a little higher than we tend to need in case something big goes down?
A little bit. I've increased these what I could because, again, the stations and some of the equipment's getting older.
Mhm.
A lot of the things I've been able to replace, we have the air compressors, the furnaces, the emergency generators. We've done a lot of work, both from grants and from capital item requests over the past couple of years, which is great.
Mhm.
But there's still a number of things in the station that's just getting old. The overhead doors, we're constantly getting overhead door company to come in for just misalignments, you know. The ventilation systems, that's extremely expensive. Those large yellow hoses that connect directly to the exhaust. It's somewhat proprietary, and I kind of wish I could find another company, but there really is not a lot of competition with it, and they're extremely expensive. The alternative, if we don't do that, is we fill the living spaces with diesel exhaust, or an older system we used to have, we lose the entire heat of the building every time the trucks go out, because we literally used to have this massive fan that would push all of the air out of the building, and we lost all the heat. So it's expensive. That's the problem.
Right, but we've been budgeting over 20,000 for the last 5 years and spending
Under
less
10.
and less every year, less than 10. And just that extra money is, we're cutting some other service, whether it's within the fire or somewhere else, for this budget that ends up going to free surplus, but still we're not providing a service because we're over budgeting here. Maybe.
One of the, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
Last year, for instance, we had to do an emergency roof repair at Station 2. I actually ended up funding the entire thing out of my budget because we moved from one line item to another, which, I completely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
However, sometimes that line may end up using more than one of the other lines, and we've overexpended one of the other ones.
Okay. Should be in the other one.
So for Scott or Sonia, can I just ask a question? So do we have, with John's point there, it's like, do we have a budget to actual for like FY 22? Like, what does that look like? Because if what John's saying, then we should see if one line item is under budget, then something should be over.
That's what's on the spreadsheet.
So I think that's what you're seeing here at the 22 line of it.
No, I'm just saying, I want to just see FY 22. I want to see the budget to actual.
Yeah, well, that's what's there that's what the 2022 line is.
Yep.
Yeah, but just give me salaries, give me equipment, give me supplies.
Yeah.
This goes on and on.
Yeah.
We need a little more consolidated budget picture.
A lot of this is here. It is on most of them. There's a couple missing, but for the most part,
and I think just quickly to that, Paul, we have a couple of different versions of what we get from Scott and Sonia. This current one that we're looking at that Daniel has shared, and thank you again, Daniel, for taking care of that, is line by line. We typically get, like we looked at our last meeting in December, the kind of the overview with the face sheet, and then department by department a budget to actual. So it's a more consolidated, like 4 or 5 page document instead of the almost 100-page document. So we do have a couple of different versions that we get, one that looks at each department and its budget, and one that looks line by line to give us more detail. And we have typically over the years that I've been on asked for higher levels of detail. This worksheet that we're looking at right now is an excellent level of detail that we've been asking for a while. So we very much appreciate that. Both Scott and Sonia for providing that. But we do have that more consolidated, like at a glance look that, excuse me, that we can look at the department itself and see each individual department.
And so
And
Matt,
I apologize that I don't have that up to share with you, to share on the Zoom right now, but we had that for last meeting.
Go ahead,
I'm
Paul.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to ask, so departments have the discretion to transfer money between line items, or do they need some type of approval from either Sonia or Town Hall or something like that? Or is it just however they see fit?
Let Scott answer that.
So, I mean, throughout line items, if it was, it's different. If it was like expenses to salary would be different, but there's throughout line items. No, there's not an issue there. In to go to, as John was saying, we actually came to Finance Committee last year to discuss fixing the roof over there. And I think we had actually intended to use reserve fund money to do that. So we were lucky that we didn't have to do that. You guys had approved it. And because of, you know, the budgeting and the fact that John managed to manage the budget well enough, we did have the money left in there. So we were able to do that and not use the reserve fund. But yeah, I mean, you know, line item by line item, if they have to shuffle here and there, that's fine.
And I'm actually gonna, sorry,
Okay, thank you.
Daniel, I'm gonna pop that back up on my sharing from my screen for a second, just to show if you can see down here at the bottom of page 35, we do have the entire budget for the department. And you can see the 2022 year to actual of where we stand, where the chief has been year to year. If you do notice, oh, sorry, that's police. I jumped down too far. Where the heck did I
Go the other way.
Oh, yep, went up too far, sorry. So back down here, the budget to actual. So there's the 2022. That's where we are, and that's what we had expended as of the printing of this. One of the things that I wanted to point out for anyone who was paying attention and noticed it, or anyone who's looking, watching this meeting and notices that 2019 to FY19 to FY20, we did not actually increase the fire department budget by about 150%. That was when we merged the fire department budget and the ambulance department budget into one department. In case anyone's wondering why the budget jumped so significantly.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, because I actually was going to try to mention that too, because it looks like we had a great year. In fact, we actually ran into this with a couple of FEMA grants that we're putting into, and they were questioning it, and we had to kind of go back and re-include the ambulance figures with that as well. So
yep.
I'm very comfortable with the way the budget is now. It's kind of all back. It's easier to maintain instead of running two concurrent budgets at the same time. Now we can run the one budget. I think that was a great move that the town did when they merged those two. So.
And so, Paul, to your question earlier about the sort of the consolidated view, this is where we stand with salaries, this is where we stand with expenses, et cetera. We can kind of get that from some of the information within this, but we can also get that more so from the other documents that Scott and Sonia have provided, but we'll make sure to continue to work to provide the right documents to the committee.
And I think too, just a reminder for everybody watching this, as well as the committee, public safety, DPW, I'm not speaking for them, I'm only going to speak for the fire, but we're kind of all similar. We never know what the year is going to be. You know, we base it on a number of contractual things like that we do, but a little bit of the extras in some of these, we may have a good year, we may have a bad year. And what I mean by that is it can be weather. It could be, we're dealing with a pandemic, and I'm not blaming this in the pandemic by any means, but it's potentially infecting it. It could be, if it's a dry year, that affects brush fires. Right now we're out of that actually, which is good. We're if anything, we're kind of wet, so I'm hoping it's not going to be a heavy winter. The age of our staff, we've got a great mix right now. I know, you know, Barbara and Matt remember a number of years ago, we had an older department because we weren't, you know, we went a number of years without filling positions, and it's good to get a lot of the younger members back, and we've got a great mix now. That actually helps alleviate line of duty injuries. Anybody can still get hurt at any point, don't get me wrong, but we're kind of diluting the workload out a little bit, if you can understand what I mean by that. So we're going to have times with, you know, fire, police like that, DPW, you're going to have a lean year. Maybe you're going to have a year you don't plow a lot of snow, so you don't have a big snow deficit, or we could get buried like back in 2014, 15. It's the same with the fire department. We never know how many fires you're going to get, how many storms you're going to get. We're very weather, you know, weather really affects this department more than fires. Weather is one of my biggest concerns. We all saw that back in October, what one storm did to this entire town for about a week. And we spent a massive amount of work with National Grid trying to get people re-energized safely. The same can be true if it's a drought, if you get the fires, if you get the winter storms. So you need a little bit of a cushion there just in case, because if we try to run our budgets perfectly, and we have done this in the past, this is the amount of hours we're going to give you, we think this is what it would be. And then you get into April and we're going to run out of money. Now you start closing fire stations, you start not filling things. Now we're not running a second ambulance. So now you're losing ambulance revenue, and you begin this domino effect. Since I've been the fire chief since 2010, we've worked very hard to avoid that, because it ultimately cost the town, I think, a lot of money in ambulance revenue, as well as injuries, as well as service. Whatever we don't use on here, it rolls back in. I completely understand where you're going with this, but I'm just trying to get you to understand kind of how we have to operate in the unknown, not knowing from year to year what it is that we're going to be facing. So that's why a couple of these, we do kind of, drift a little bit from one account to another. Scott's correct. We cannot take salaries from expenses and vice versa on our own. We can do that with a vote of selectmen toward the end of the fiscal year or a town meeting. We really try not to do that, to be honest with you. But there's a couple of safeties built in. I think that's a state law, not a town. But some towns can do that. They can actually take. I could say, you know what? I want another tower truck tomorrow, and I'm going to lay off half my firefighters, and I'm going to buy a $1.5 million fire truck. I'm not going to have anybody to run it. There are some towns that literally can do that. We don't. We've got more checks and balances in our budget. We cannot do that for a number of reasons, as well as I can't just say I'm going to go hire 8 more firefighters and I'm just not going to pay the gas bill. I can't do that either. So there's checks and balances both ways.
Yeah. So to that point, just a couple of quick points, both for Paul, for Daniel, who's new, and for anyone who's listening. There are definitely restrictions as to what we can do. Like the chief was saying, kind of within the same category line item within like fire department expenses, there's wiggle room to move things around. But Paul and Drew were on for when we did the year-end transfers. If we are going from expenses to salaries or across departments where we overspent in one area and have money left over in another area, those are things that have to be approved either by the finance committee making an approval to transfer money from one area, one line to another, or at town meeting itself. There are certain things that we can't do unless town meeting approves it, if town meeting approved it in the first place for a specific use. So there are definitely restrictions, but within certain smaller areas like salaries or expenses, there's a little bit of wiggle room for the departments to be able to kind of run their budget a little bit on their own. Paul, you're on mute.
But we're really talking about, because 85% of the budget is salaries and other compensation. So we're talking about $600,000 in these. I even felt a little embarrassed asking these questions about in service, because it's like, it's very small in comparison to the bigger picture.
I've been there with you. I've been there with you when we're asking questions about like travel budgets that are like $1,000 when we're looking at a like $50-60 million overall budget. It seems like quibbling over that, but that does tend to be what we're supposed to do as the finance committee. So it's good that you're asking the question.
But I do think that Chris's point earlier, it's like all of these, could add up to possibly a position or other services provided. So, not knocking John or any other department head, but it is where the salaries drive most of the budget. There's, as long as you, John, are comfortable with maintaining that salary and that it'll, get your 6 person for a shift 24 hours a day, then, that's great.
And one thing that I will say, in the 9 or so years that I've been on the committee, Chief Nuttall has done an excellent job of not necessarily nailing each individual line item that we look at, but nailing pretty close the amounts for his overall budget and for the sections of his budget, and staying within those. Sometimes it's really tight down to the wire for him, and he's talking to us in May or June about, hey, I might need you to do a reserve fund transfer to cover this. And he usually tends to find a way for us not to have to do that to get to the end of the fiscal year for his budget. But he's done an excellent job of presenting us with a budget that's pretty close and pretty spot on. And if you look at what I've got shared up on the screen there with the FY19, 20, 21, and 22 budgets, they're always pretty close.
I think too, budgeting for possibilities is always hard.
It's hard, very hard.
You just, you try to do it in your own home. If you know things are like, oh, this is like iffy. So that's always hard. Could you be using that money, in your own home someplace else? It's definitely a tough call.
And then grocery prices go up.
Yeah, I mean, there's just stuff that we nobody saw the pandemic coming. That was, just things that we, and certainly for certain departments, I think it's more challenging. Just, things that you just really can't predict. But I have a couple of questions, John, real quick. How many firefighters compared to firefighter paramedics do you have right now?
We have a total, the entire department is 28 members, including my administrative assistant. There are 2 EMTs, myself and 1 senior firefighter. Everybody else is a paramedic with the exception of Alexis, my administrative assistant. So there's 20, I think 25 paramedics and 2 EMTs.
Yeah. Then I just wanted to ask about the cost of dispatch.
Dispatch right now is 0.
Okay.
Because we got the police to go over there.
Thank you to the police.
I haven't spoken to the police chief this week. It's just been a crazy week because I know that they just switched over this week on that, and there's going to be bugs. We're listening to it. I think it's going to go well for them. I don't want to speak for him by any means because I'm sure he's losing sleep over this, as I did when we first went over to Holbrook, until we iron these bugs out. Holbrook has done very well with us. I know Holbrook. I don't know. I'm going to say it. I don't know if we're supposed to or not, but Holbrook Dispatch is trying to get Town Hall an emergency generator on a grant because a lot of our infrastructure goes through the email system at Town Hall. And when Town Hall loses power, we're out. Technically, it can affect emergency responses, emergency notification to us. So Holbrook is trying to get us an emergency generator at no cost to the town of Abington. Scott, I apologize if I let that out early, but because it's not a guarantee, but that's an example of how Holbrook has really benefited this town. Holbrook ran new fiber optic cable from their fire station Holbrook up to Philibron's Tower, which is that very tall tower up on North Quincy Street, out of their budget, their grant, which goes right into my main radio antenna, which is another backup for our radio infrastructure. That was no cost to us. I could speak all night about some of the benefits we're having with Holbrook. The main thing you're looking for is right now for this year, and I think next year, but it's not in front of me, is the cost of Holbrook is 0 because we were able to get the police to go over as well. And they're the primary public safety answering point.
And looking forward, what would we expect it to be in years to follow? Or we really, prior to the police department going over, what was the cost?
The fire department, I'm going to defer to you, Scott, in a moment on this for her first question, but for this year, it would have been $170,000.
Okay.
Right now it's 0. Scott, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it graduates after the first year or maybe the second year. Then the cost starts coming back.
Coming back, right.
But as a percentage, it doesn't come back full for, I think, 5 years. I don't have the contract in front of me, but it is graduated. So eventually we do end up bearing the burden or Again, at that point, that's when the grant runs out.
Right.
They'll also assumedly apply for a new grant at that time, which should subsidize the cost yet again. How much, we don't know. It could be very little.
Right. All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Chief Nuttall? Chief, warrant articles?
I really have
plans.
nothing. There's one potential that I had submitted, I think, to Scott and Sonia, and I don't think I'm going to need it. And this would probably be more for a special town meeting in the event that I do have 2 firefighters retire this year. If the year's running light, it would cover their contractual sick leave buyback. I think I can take that out of the existing budget, but I was going to put a place saver there just in case. And that dollar figure, I don't have it with me, and I think it was about $40,000, I believe. I don't have that in front of me, and I apologize. Beyond that, I have no other warrant articles. Last year or the year before, we had, I think it was $150,000 to rehab 3 of the older fire engines. That project went extremely well. There's still old engines. Our oldest engine is still 25 years old. I could literally put antique plates on that, but it's in great shape. And a new engine's about $700,000 and they're 18 months out. It's 18 months out for anything. I'm not asking for anything right now because, to Paul and, some of the other, the members that said, we're one small piece of a larger pie in the town of Abington. And I'm very cognizant of that. We're trying to, by spending $150,000 to maintain 3 engines to give them more life, that's cheaper than me this year or next year coming up saying I need $750,000 for another engine. I'm trying to avoid that as long as I can because I do understand there are other departments in this town as well, and we tend to be expensive what we ask for. The ambulance, we will need to replace ambulance 3 when our newest ambulance is paid off, and I think it's 2 years. Just because, we're running these into the ground. It won't be me replacing it. It'll be another chief at that point. And we may not be getting the very expensive ambulances we have been because the roads are killing them. As much as we tried between Route 18 and Brockton Ave, our 2 main hospitals. Luckily, we do have the heavy duty ambulances because they're surviving, but even they're taking a toll. So that'll be for another chief to decide which direction they want to go with what type of ambulance to get. There's 2 schools of thoughts on that. And if Sean Tyler was here, we could spend the rest of the night talking about this.
Yes.
I
On
think
that note, John, ambulance receipts, where are you at with ambulance receipts and maybe just touching on that and what's coming back into the town through running the 2 ambulances, this year compared to last year and then going forward.
I believe this year's up. I do not have those figures in front of me. I don't know if Sonia does. I apologize. I do not have.
That's all right. Sonia, do you have that information?
I ran a couple of reports and I can see that we are we're running right about in line with where we would expect at the 1/3 mark. We were at 30% of what we budgeted. And if Chief is saying that, winter months tend to be a little bit higher for ambulance receipts, then I would say we're probably on track with what we budgeted.
And then how about what's coming back into the town? I know certain insurance companies are better with their percentage that they pay. Has any of that changed?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I don't believe there's been any change unless just in the industry itself. It's a very confusing topic. I would defer, at some point, Sonia.
Right, you bill for a certain amount and you get through certain insurance companies, you only receive a percentage. And some insurance companies are notoriously, they come in low consistently.
This can break down the demographics. The easiest way to explain this in a big picture without giving you numbers, but I think it's going to explain it better. In talking to a number of my colleagues, because the fire chiefs will have these discussions from time to time, and it's pretty amazing. We could have the same exact call volume, number of transports for Abington, for Norwell, and let's say for Brockton. And all 3 towns are going to have drastically different numbers. I'm gonna wish I had Norwell's numbers, and Brockton's gonna wish they had Abington's numbers. And it's based on it's socioeconomic, it's demographics, it's based on what insurance is available, what subsequent insurance, you know, if maybe more people in Hingham may have 2 or 3 different types of additional insurances on top of whatever they have for main one. And maybe somebody in another town or city, they're on Mass Health. So that's going to reflect the reimbursements that we're going to receive back in receipts. We're going to send the same bill no matter what it is.
Right.
We're not going to get that, you know, the actual receipts we're going to get back is going to be drastically different. And honestly, we don't really, you know, hammer the patient for that. Most municipalities don't, you know, it's kind of just the cost of doing business.
Right.
It offsets our budget, but we're not in it for profit. I think that being said, we do have an excellent company. And as you recall, I think, Barbara, one of the first things I took over as the fire chief is we changed the ambulance billing company and policies. That was like the first thing I did. That primed the pump to bring in, you know, for the same call volume we had, I think the first year we brought in an additional $250,000. That kind of primed the pump to get everything building up and ultimately to run a second ambulance to bring in more revenue that we were losing to our surrounding mutual aid towns.
Well, that's kind of what I was looking at, was like, you know, are we still,
they're both busy.
running the
They're
2
both running-
ambulances and the reimbursements, you know, is it still beneficial financially?
I believe so. In fact, Abington really became the model for most of our area towns who are running 2 ambulances doing the same thing as best as they can. You know, because they saw how much we were getting back. Instead of our patients, you know, the revenue going to Rockland, Whitman, and Holbrook, we were retaining a lot of them. There are still times we're going to have a mutual aid ambulance in here when both of ours are out and we have, you know, 3 or 4 calls going on at the same time. That still happens weekly.
Mhm.
I mean, there's only so much we can do, but for the vast majority of them, we're capturing most of that revenue would have gone somewhere else anyway. And we'd rather provide our residents our own ambulance staff if we could anyway. So that has worked out well, I think.
Okay, thank you, John. Any other questions?
Nope.
John, thank you very much for your time. Really
Yes.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you,
Hope you
everybody. I
feel
know
better.
Thank you. This is a confusing budget. You know, trying to simplify this, and I'm on Dayquil, not NyQuil. So if I was on NyQuil doing this would have been really interesting. And again, to go back to the very first thing I said, and I know it's late to move on, but this budget does not include any contractual pay raises for FY23. That's just something you're going to have to, you know, remember. And I know Scott's fully aware of it, and everybody else is too. But I think we'll be probably having further discussions as we go.
And
Okay, thank you, folks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And Scott, that's not a number we can even throw around because that's a contractual, so.
We haven't even
bargaining.
started the bargaining process. Yeah, so we just can't talk about it at this point.
Right, yep, I just wanted to clarify why we're not throwing figures out or, you know, this is what I think, or, you know, it's part of the collective bargaining.
Correct.
So that kind of wraps up.
Yep. So Barbara,
departments?
I've survived till this point in the meeting.
Yep, you wanna wrap
and,
it up then?
Not feeling too bad right now, so I can kind of run through the
All right,
end of the meeting part. And obviously it's late. We don't want to take too much more time for people. So does anyone have any liaison reports? Anyone on the committee? I'm seeing a bunch of heads shaking. No. For Daniel's benefit, since this is his first meeting, each of the committee members get assigned different departments to be the liaison for or to be the backup liaison for, and we reach out leading up to a meeting like tonight where the department heads are coming in to go over their budget to see if there's anything to share, or in between meetings when they're coming in to see if anything is coming up, if they have any kind of emergency need like an HVAC system going down or anything like that. So right now we've got no liaison reports, so there's nothing to say there. Correspondence, I don't know if Scott or Sonia have checked our mailbox. I'm going to guess no. So I'm going to move right along to review of minutes. We do actually have 2 sets of minutes provided by our recording secretary, Deb. And before I get to those, I think Scott had something to say regarding Deb.
Yes, after many years of Deb working with the Finance Committee as your recording secretary, Deb has stepped down. We want to thank her for all the work she's done. It's been a great help to me, and I'm sure to this committee over the last couple of years that I've been here, and as long as you guys have been on. But thank you, and Deb will still be here with her regular duties, but just no longer working the night shift with you guys.
Yeah, Deb has been fantastic for my time on the committee, and we definitely appreciate all the work that she's put in.
Absolutely. Deb was the only person here longer than me.
Yes.
And yes, definitely much appreciated.
Yeah.
And hope that Deb gets to enjoy her Wednesday evenings
Right.
during
Yes.
budget season going forward for sure. One thing though, Matt.
Yep.
We probably should have touched upon at the beginning of the meeting. We were thinking Deb was going to be here. I didn't see anyone. I can't remember who the recording secretary is for us, how you want to handle the meeting minutes for tonight.
I think that it's Russ this year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oddly enough, I
So
did
is
take
that
a-
why you look really pale, Russ, after that announcement?
No, well, yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Well, luckily, I always take really good notes, and I'm looking at 3 or 4 typed pages of notes that I took tonight, but I didn't take them in minutes format, but I still have another set of minutes.
It's okay, Russ. I think as long
From a
as
few
we-
months ago to do, so it's gonna be this will be a bit of a challenge for me this spring, so.
Yep.
we probably should have given you a heads up about tonight's meeting
Yeah.
sooner. Sorry about that, Russ.
That's okay. Yeah, I definitely, it'll be interesting to try to see how I can do this going forward. So that's going to make me think about it a little bit.
I'm sure there's a hunt.
I will
I'm sure
put an
Scott's-
offer.
What's that?
I said, I will put an offer out there to see if anybody is interested in taking on these duties. So we'll try and get someone in here. But also remember that the meeting minutes are not meant to be transcripts.
Word for word.
Right. Matter of fact, sometimes less is more. Put in there what people, basically the general gist of the meeting and anybody who was in attendance and the important subject matter that we discussed. And if you take any vote, obviously.
Motions, who made the motion, who seconded it, that
Yep.
type of thing.
But definitely,
Yeah.
definitely
And
having been a recording secretary myself before, it is definitely beneficial to the committee. It's hard to be taking the notes and participating and really getting all the information that you need to make your decisions, when you're trying to take the notes. So if we
Absolutely.
can,
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
Yep.
Thank you.
upside is it's all been recorded, so you can play it back in one.
This is the great
Yes.
thing. about- Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
I know Joe did that a bunch last year with some meetings that he had to do the minutes for.
Yeah.
Speaking of meetings and minutes, sharing now on the screen minutes from our October 10th meeting. Relevant people who were there who can vote on this and make motions on this: Russ, Paul, Drew, Joe, and myself. I looked through them. The minutes looked good.
I'll do a motion to approve the minutes.
There's a motion from Joe. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second from Russ, stealing it from Drew just a little bit quicker. Is there any, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes from our October 10th, 2021 meeting? Without any discussion, doing a roll call, as I was instructed at the beginning of the meeting, we have to do roll call for any votes. All those, I'll go through. First off, if you were not at the meeting as a as a member, you can abstain on voting on the minutes. So Chris, your vote.
Abstain.
Paul, you're on mute. Paul votes a thumbs up. Joe.
Yeah, approve. Yeah, yes.
Daniel.
Staying.
Yep. Russ,
Proof.
Drew,
Approve.
Barbara,
Abstaining.
and I approve the minutes. So the final vote is 5, 0, and 4. With that. And the meeting minutes are approved for October 10th. And here, let me do a quick switch of the share. Now we have meeting minutes for our December 15th meeting. And for those of relevance, Russ, Paul, Drew, Chris, and myself were on that one.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the December 15th meeting.
So I have a
Second.
motion from Drew, seconded by Russ. Is there any discussion on the
Can
meeting
you just
minutes?
scroll down just so?
Yep.
All right.
All right. Any discussion on the meeting minutes from December 15th, 2021? So with no discussion, I will move to the vote. Chris, your vote.
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Joe,
Abstain.
Daniel,
Abstain.
Russ,
Proof.
Drew,
Aye.
Barbara,
Abstaining.
and I vote aye to approve. So again, the vote is 5-0, and it's actually 3, not 4, because Greg is missing. So 3 abstentions, 5 approvals. So the minutes are approved. That is the end of minutes that we have to vote on for this meeting. Next meeting, as we go back to our agenda, our next meeting is next week, January 12th. And in that meeting, we will have, I believe, hang on, that I had that meeting agenda up. Let me look at it again. We have the assessors department, the planning board, and the police department on tap for next week. The town clerk was originally on tap then, but has asked to be moved to a different week because of a conflict. So assessor, planning board, and police next week. Is there anything further for tonight that anyone has?
Matt, I think we have a couple of prior meeting minutes that haven't been approved.
Yes, we do, Paul, and we'll get back to those.
Not that I'm anxious on it, but I just.
Yep. No, we definitely do. I just, for tonight, I was not ready with those.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, just, I also need to voice my opinion. I said this before, I think 4 departments on one night, when we have, some new people, especially.
This was a long night.
It is. And bigger departments, like your fire department's a bigger department, your police department's a bigger department. Trying to do 4 departments with one of them being a bigger department on one night, can get a little challenging.
Yep, I agree.
Just
so I'll look with Sonia throughout the rest of the schedule to see if there's anything that we need to adjust.
Well, it seems like next week kind of took care of itself.
Yes, it did. So with that, are there any other discussion points, motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I heard Barbara first. Is there a second? From Russ? Second from Russ. Is there any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Without any quick roll call, just to make sure we're official. Chris?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Daniel?
Aye.
Russ?
Aye.
Drew?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
And an aye for me. That's a unanimous decision. We are adjourned.